I am Eden Barbieri, 28 years old, and I am standing in the suffocating heat of a New Orleans cathedral, wearing a $10,000 silk gown, staring down an aisle that feels miles long. The heavy oak doors groan inward, letting the dense Mississippi Delta humidity bleed into the air-conditioned sanctuary. Dust motes dance in the light filtering through the stained glass. The organist strikes the first resonant chord of the bridal chorus. It is a sound meant to signal triumph. Instead, it amplifies the most humiliating silence of my life. The space to my left, where my father Dominic should be standing to link his arm through mine, is empty. The front pew designated for the parents of the bride sits vacant. There is no mother dabbing her eyes. There is no younger sister adjusting my train. Just smooth, polished mahogany gleaming under the vaulted ceiling. Before I tell you how I walked down that aisle alone and plotted the legal destruction of the empire that raised me, tell me your age in the comments below, and welcome to the Amanda Told Stories channel. Hit that like button if you believe toxic family members deserve 0 passes. My mind drags me back 48 hours to the dim lighting of my bridal suite and the cold glow of my phone screen. The text from my mother Vivian had arrived at midnight, devoid of a greeting or a shred of hesitation. Giselle's anxiety has peaked, the message read. The pressure of your event is too much for her right now. Your father and I are taking her to Maui for a mental health break. We will be off the grid. Your ceremony is trivial in comparison to her well-being. You will manage. Trivial. A year of meticulous planning, non-refundable deposits, and carefully curated invitations sent to the elite of the Gulf Coast shipping industry reduced to a footnote. I am the eldest daughter. I am the marine logistics coordinator who keeps the Barbieri Maritime Fleet running on schedule through the murky waters of the Louisiana bayous. I have spent my entire adult life auditing shipping logs, managing cargo routes, and ensuring my father's company dominates the southern ports. Yet my own wedding is dismissed as an inconvenience. I take a breath, letting the heavy, damp air fill my lungs. I force my right foot forward. The rustling of my silk train echoes loudly as I cross the marble tiles. 200 guests turn to watch. These are not just friends. They are port commissioners, shipyard owners, and regional brokers. They are the aristocracy of Louisiana commerce. As I walk, the pitying whispers slither through the pews like water over river stones. Did Dominic really boycott a woman in a wide-brimmed hat? Murmurs to her neighbor, her gaze darting to the empty space beside me. I heard they pulled the catering funds yesterday, an older gentleman whispers back, adjusting his tie. Tragic. Left her to face the wolves. My cheeks burn. My posture stiffens. Every step feels like wading through wet cement. The societal humiliation is a physical weight pressing against my chest. It is a public declaration that the Barbieri family finds me unworthy of their presence. I keep my eyes fixed on the altar, refusing to let the tears spill. If I blink, the facade will crack. Then, the rhythm of the ceremony breaks. Leo does not wait for me to reach the steps. He does not stand politely by the priest, adhering to tradition, while I drown in the stares of the elite. Seeing the rigid terror in my shoulders, my fiancé descends the altar. He walks briskly down the center aisle, his dark suit cutting a sharp line through the sea of whispering guests. He meets me halfway. Without a single word, Leo gently pries my freezing fingers from my bouquet of white magnolias and intertwines his warm hand with mine. His grip is firm and grounding. He does not offer a look of pity. His jaw set, his eyes locked on mine with a fierce, quiet loyalty. The murmurs in the pews falter, silenced by the steady, unyielding way he leads me the rest of the way forward. The storm in my chest eases, anchored by the simple weight of his hand. We speak our vows, not to a room full of supporters, but to each other, sealing a promise in a room thick with judgment. The reception at the Roosevelt Hotel is a grueling test of endurance. I smile until my jaw aches. I nod gracefully through the endless, thinly veiled condolences disguised as congratulations. I drink champagne that tastes like ash, dance under the crystal chandeliers, and pretend the gaping hole at the head table does not exist. Every time a Port Authority official offers a sympathetic tilt of the head, my stomach twists. By the time we finally retreat to our honeymoon suite, the clock on the bedside table reads 2 in the morning. I unpin the veil from my hair, letting it fall to the carpet. I am exhausted down to the marrow of my bones, my skin chafed from the heavy fabric of the gown. The air conditioning hums a stark contrast to the lingering heat of the day. Leo is in the other room, speaking quietly with the hotel concierge about our bags, giving me a moment to breathe. Sinking onto the edge of the mattress, I pick up my phone. Habit dictates checking my notifications for any logistical emergencies at the port. At the top of my social media feed is a fresh update. It is not a scenic sunset shot or a quiet wellness retreat. It is a video posted publicly to Giselle's account, tagged with a location pin in Honolulu. I tap the screen. The video opens on the sun-drenched deck of a luxury catamaran. The turquoise Pacific stretches endlessly in the background. Upbeat music blares over the speakers. Giselle spins into the frame. Her skin is glowing and she is wearing a designer swimsuit and oversized sunglasses. There is no trace of the crippling anxiety my mother claimed she was suffering from. Behind her stands JACE, her fiancé, holding a bottle of vintage champagne. He pops the cork, sending a spray of foam over the teak deck as Giselle throws her head back and laughs. Jace raises his glass to the camera, a smug grin plastered across his face. To dodging bullets, he yells over the wind. Giselle leans into the frame, clinking her crystal flute against his. Cheers to escaping the most boring budget wedding of the decade, she chimes in, her voice dripping with amusement. Mental health restored. The video loops. The laughter echoes in the quiet hotel room. The phone feels like a block of ice in my palm. They did not flee a crisis. They orchestrated an insult, broadcasting their disdain to the world while I walked down the aisle alone. They used my special day as a punchline for their vacation. I stare at the screen as the video restarts for the third time, the champagne cork popping again. The shock fades. The grief that had been choking me all day evaporates, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar clarity settling deep in my ribs. I press the power button on the phone, plunging the screen into darkness. I realize in that silent room that I have spent my entire life trying to earn a seat at a table that was built to exclude me. I am done asking for their approval. Now they will have to answer to me. 2 weeks pass before I see them again. The heavy Louisiana heat presses down on the city, turning the air thick and stagnant. I drive into the French Quarter, navigating the narrow streets until I reach the imposing wrought iron gates of the Barbieri estate. The sprawling courtyard is shaded by ancient oak trees, draped in Spanish moss, a picturesque display of generational wealth that hides the rot festering inside. I park my car on the cobblestone driveway and grip the steering wheel. My knuckles turn white. For 14 days, I waited for a phone call. I expected a fragmented apology, a fabricated excuse, or even a token gesture of regret for abandoning me at the altar. Instead, there was only silence. I step out of the car, the humidity instantly clinging to my skin. The scent of blooming night jasmine mixes with the faint metallic odor of the distant river. I walk up the brick pathway, my heels clicking a steady rhythm against the stone. I find my parents on the shaded back veranda. The scene is so idyllic it makes my stomach turn. Vivian reclines on a custom rattan chaise lounge, holding a sweating crystal glass of iced tea. Her skin boasts a fresh golden tan from the Hawaiian sun. Dominic sits across from her at a glass patio table, swiping through a digital tablet. Neither of them looks up when the heavy wooden door clicks shut behind me. "You missed my wedding," I say. My voice is level, betraying none of the sleepless nights I endured over the past 2 weeks. Vivian lets out a long, theatrical sigh. She lowers her designer sunglasses down the bridge of her nose, fixing me with a look of profound irritation rather than guilt. Eden, she begins, her tone dripping with exhaustion. We already discussed this dynamic. Giselle was incredibly fragile. The anxiety surrounding your event was pushing her toward a breakdown. As her parents, we had to prioritize her immediate well-being. Do not be selfish. There is zero remorse in her eyes. She speaks as if skipping her eldest daughter's wedding to drink vintage champagne on a yacht was a noble medical intervention. I open my mouth to argue, to demand they acknowledge the public humiliation they subjected me to, but Dominic cuts me off. He locks his tablet and tosses it onto the glass table with a sharp clatter. He does not look like a father who just wounded his child. He looks like a corporate executive irritated by an underperforming employee. Since you are standing here, Dominic says, leaning forward and resting his forearms on his knees, we have business to discuss. He seamlessly changes the subject, erasing my pain from the agenda entirely. I watch him closely. Before I stepped onto the veranda, I overheard him pacing in his study through the open French doors. He was barking into his phone at a customs broker, his voice tight with an uncharacteristic panic. He had mentioned a sudden tariff penalty, a gap in an offshore account, and a pending federal audit. He had demanded the broker stall the inspectors at the port of South Louisiana. Now, looking at his rigid posture, I realize he is coiled tight with stress. Your sister is planning her own ceremony, now Dominic continues, his dark eyes locking onto mine. Given the elite circles JACE operates in, the scale of her event has expanded. We require a contribution from you. A family loyalty tribute. I stare at him, trying to process the sheer audacity of the request. You want me to fund Giselle's wedding? I want you to demonstrate that you are still part of this family, he corrects smoothly. The logistics firm pays you an exceptional salary. We expect a wire transfer of $40,000 by Friday. The number hangs in the humid air. $40,000. It is a highly specific, strange figure. A wedding planner does not suddenly demand exactly $40,000 on a random Tuesday afternoon. The overheard phone call echoes in my mind. The offshore tariff penalty, the audit. The dots hover just out of reach, but the intuition that has made me a brilliant marine logistics coordinator flares to life. He does not need this money for floral arrangements or catering. Dominic desperately needs untraceable cash to cover a hidden financial gap before the authorities notice. He is using Giselle's wedding as a pristine, unquestionable cover story to extort his own daughter. For a decade, my role in this family was the shock absorber. I managed the complex cargo routes. I fixed the logistical nightmares at the docks. I smoothed over every single one of Giselle's reckless tantrums. The ingrained conditioning screams at me to write the check. My pulse hammers in my throat. A heavy, invisible weight presses down on my shoulders, urging me to buy their approval to restore the fragile peace. To just say yes and make the tension disappear. My fingers twitch toward the clasp of my purse. Then I remember the empty aisle. I remember the pitying whispers of the port commissioners. I remember Leo gripping my shaking hand while my family mocked me from a catamaran in the Pacific Ocean. No, I say. The single syllable drops like a stone. Vivian freezes her glass of iced tea, halting halfway to her lips. Excuse me, Dominic says. His voice drops an octave, shedding the polite corporate veneer. I am not giving you a dime for her wedding, I reply, lifting my chin. My voice gains strength with every word. You walked away from me. You made your choice. Do not ask me to finance your favorite child. Dominic stands up. He is a tall man, broad-shouldered, a fixture of intimidation across the Gulf Coast. He steps directly into my personal space, The scent of his expensive cologne and stale cigar smoke washes over me, suffocating and heavy. He looks down at me, his eyes cold and devoid of any paternal warmth. "You seem to forget how this state operates, Eden," he whispers. His tone is a razor blade wrapped in velvet. "I sit on the Port Authority board. I built the shipping lanes you rely on. I control the unions, the docks, and the freight contracts. You think your little logistics career protects you? Selfishness has severe consequences in my waters. Do not force me to remind you who owns the tide." He holds my gaze for 5 agonizing seconds, ensuring the threat sinks deep into my bones. Then he turns his back on me, picks up his tablet, and walks back into the house. Vivian simply adjusts her sunglasses, lies back on her chaise lounge, and turns her face toward the sun. I have been dismissed. I turn on my heel and walk away. My heart races, but a new, blazing anger burns through the fear. I march down the brick pathway, passing the manicured hedges and the stone fountains, eager to escape the toxic gravity of the estate. As I reach the shade of the ancient oak tree where my car is parked, a figure steps out from behind the trunk blocking the driver's side door. It is JACE. He wears a tailored slate gray suit that costs more than his actual monthly salary. He is a junior executive at a rival shipping firm, a man who earned nothing but takes credit for everything. His hair is perfectly styled, and a smug, superior smirk plays on his lips. He tosses a set of heavy car keys in his hand, catching them with a rhythmic clink. "Leaving so soon?" Eden JACE asks, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Move," I demand, gripping the handle of my purse. He does not budge. He leans against my car, crossing his ankles. "Dominic told me you might throw a tantrum about the tribute. He warned me you lacked the vision to protect the family name." I step closer, refusing to let him intimidate me. "I do not care what Dominic told you. Get out of my way!" JACE chuckles, a dry, grating sound. He leans in, lowering his voice. "You really should have written that check, Eden. You play the role of the independent logistics genius, but you forget who controls the board." He stops tossing the keys, his eyes narrow, glinting with a predatory satisfaction. "The maritime industry in Louisiana is a very small, very fragile ecosystem," JACE whispers. "The waters get murky real fast. It would be a profound tragedy if your multi-million-dollar shipping contracts suddenly encountered regulatory issues. Cargo gets delayed, clients get nervous, contracts sink." He steps aside, offering a mocking, sweeping gesture toward my car door. "Drive safe, sister-in-law," he says, his smirk widening. I slide into the driver's seat and lock the doors. My hands grip the steering wheel as JACE saunters away, disappearing into the shadows of the estate. I turn the key in the ignition. The engine roars to life, cutting through the heavy silence of the courtyard. They think they can squeeze me. They think they can leverage my career to cover their hidden crimes. I pull out of the driveway, the tires gripping the cobblestones. They believe they are untouchable, but they just made a fatal miscalculation. They taught me how to navigate the murky waters of the Delta, and now I'm going to drag them straight into the undertow. The port of South Louisiana stretches for 50 winding miles along the muddy banks of the Mississippi River. It is a relentless, sprawling, industrial beast where the air always tastes of diesel fuel, river silt, and ozone. I arrive at Terminal Delta before the morning sun has a chance to bake the asphalt. I built my independent logistics firm from a single rented folding table, hauling myself up through a notoriously insular, male-dominated industry. I succeeded because I know every river current, every union boss, and every tariff code better than men twice my age. Today is supposed to be a routine victory lap. I'm scheduled to renew a 5-year contract with Meridian Freight, the anchor client that generates 60% of my annual revenue. I push open the heavy glass doors of the Port Authority Administrative Building. The central air conditioning hits my skin, raising goosebumps on my arms. I walk down the linoleum corridor and step into conference room B. My contact at Meridian, a pragmatic senior executive named Calvin, sits at the polished oak table. He refuses to meet my eye. His gaze is glued to the legal pad in front of him. Sitting at the head of the table is JACE. He wears a sharp navy suit, tailored perfectly to mask his narrow shoulders. Two port compliance officers sit flat, shuffling fixed stacks of official municipal paperwork. My stomach drops cold and heavy. JACE does not work for Meridian. He is a junior executive at Gulfstar Logistics, a rival firm that has been trying to poach my clients for years. Eden, we have a situation, Calvin says, shifting uncomfortably in his leather chair. Meridian is pulling your account. We are terminating the contract effective immediately. I freeze. My briefcase slips a fraction of an inch in my grip before I tighten my fingers. I demand to know the grounds for termination. I remind Calvin that my fleet has 0 delayed shipments, 0 lost cargo incidents, and perfect safety ratings. The compliance officer to my left clears his throat. Zoning shift, he states, sliding a document across the table. Board Directive 82, passed in an emergency late-night session. I know the code. I reach for the paper, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. My primary shipping lanes, the deep water channels I spent 3 years negotiating access to, have been abruptly reclassified as restricted ecological preservation zones. Commercial freighters of a certain tonnage can no longer legally dock there. Dominic sponsored the initiative. JACE chimes in, steepling his manicured fingers together. He raised urgent concerns about marshland erosion. The board voted unanimously to protect the delta. Your lanes are dead water now, sister-in-law. The hypocrisy is suffocating. My father has spent his entire career dredging wetlands to expand his shipyards. Yet today, he is playing the role of an environmental savior just to blockade my business. Calvin finally looks up, his expression deeply apologetic. JACE's firm operates out of Sector 9, he explains quietly. That zone remains fully compliant for heavy commercial transit. We have to move our cargo to Gulfstar Eden. If we do not, our perishable goods will literally rot on the water, waiting for clearance. My hands are tied. JACE stands up, casually buttoning his suit jacket. Logistics is a fragile business, he says, walking slowly toward the door. You need serious infrastructure to survive out here. You need deep pockets. Most importantly, you need family backing. You flew a little too close to the sun trying to operate independent of the Barbieri umbrella. Now your wings are clipped. He smiles, a slow, triumphant grin. This is not a simple business transaction. This is a public execution. Dominic did not just steal my largest client. He abused his seat on the Port Authority Board to orchestrate a bureaucratic siege. He engineered a scenario where I am legally forbidden from doing my job, systematically bankrupting my firm simply because I refuse to pay his $40,000 extortion fee. I walk out of the administrative building, leaving Calvin and the compliance officers in their frozen silence. The heavy heat of the Louisiana morning hits me like a physical blow. The humidity wraps around my throat. I wander down toward the active docks, watching the colossal steel cranes lift shipping containers onto waiting cargo vessels. The sheer scale of my father's empire looms over me, casting long, inescapable shadows across the concrete. A figure steps out from behind a stack of rusted shipping pallets blocking my path. It is Harlan. He is a veteran harbor master, a man whose skin is weathered like old leather from 40 years of working the Delta sun. He worked alongside my grandfather long before Dominic took control of the family trust. Harlan glances over his shoulder, ensuring no supervisors or security cameras are angled in our direction. He reaches out and slides a small, cold metallic object into my palm. It is a generic black USB drive. Your daddy is moving heavy chess pieces today, Harlan mutters, his voice a gravelly whisper. But his new golden boy does not know how to cover his tracks in the mud. The night shift manifests are a mess, Eden. Take a close look at what JACE is bringing through Sector 9. Harlan turns and walks briskly away toward the fueling stations before I can ask a single question. I retreat to my mobile office trailer parked in the edge of the gravel lot. The metal walls hum from the vibration of the diesel generator outside. The air inside is stale and hot. I lock the deadbolt behind me, sit at my metal desk, and plug the drive into my secure terminal. My fingers fly across the keyboard, bypassing the rudimentary encryption Harlan warned me about. The screen floods with raw doc logs. Thousands of shipping containers, all registered to JACE's shell companies, processed between midnight and 4 in the morning over the last 3 months. I filter the data, applying the rigorous auditing formulas Dominic taught me when I was a teenager. He used to sit me at his grand mahogany desk, showing me how to cross-reference manifest weights to catch dock thieves. It is a bitter irony that his own lessons are about to illuminate his downfall. The numbers look pristine at first glance. The paperwork matches the customs declarations perfectly. But then I notice a discrepancy buried deep in the physical displacement metrics. A shipment of industrial machinery enters the port documented at 80,000 pounds. But the crane sensors the internal computer systems that record the actual physical strain of lifting the steel boxes off the cargo ships register the weight at only 40,000 pounds. The outbound cargo manifests show those exact same containers leaving the port, weighing double what they supposedly entered with. My pulse thumps hard against my ribs. You do not simply misplace 40,000 pounds of steel. You falsify the logs. You misreport the cargo weight to evade heavy federal customs tariffs. They are bringing in ghost cargo, paying a fraction of the required taxes and pocketing the difference. This explains the sudden $40,000 gap Dominic desperately needed me to cover. The Port Authority auditors must have noticed a missing payment, and Dominic needed untraceable cash to balance the books before the federal government launched an inquiry. JACE is not just a rival executive. He is running a federal smuggling ring right under the nose of the United States Customs and Border Protection. Before I can dig deeper into the offshore routing numbers, a sharp, authoritative knock rattles the thin aluminum door of my trailer. I quickly eject the USB drive, slide it into my pocket, and pull open the door. A young man in a cheap gray windbreaker stands on the metal steps, sweating in the heat. He asks if I am Eden Barbieri. I nod slowly. He hands me a thick, sealed envelope made of expensive cream parchment. "You have been served," he says, turning and walking swiftly back to an unmarked sedan idling in the gravel lot. I look at the return address embossed in crisp black ink in the upper left corner. It is from Vanguard and Reed, the premier estate law firm representing the Barbieri family trust. The coordinated siege has officially moved from the muddy waters of the shipping docks directly to the polished floors of the courtroom. The polished brass plaque reading Vanguard and Reed reflects the harsh Louisiana sunlight, but inside the law firm, the temperature is frigid enough to preserve a corpse. I step into the expansive corner office overlooking the Mississippi River. The space smells of lemon polish, old paper, and expensive leather. It is a room designed to make you feel small. Sitting across a vast mahogany table are my parents, flanked by Arthur Reed, the senior managing partner, who has handled the Barbieri family trust for 3 decades. Mr. Reed gestures to a high-backed chair opposite them. I take a seat, keeping my posture rigid, refusing to let my shoulders slump. Vivienne refuses to meet my gaze. She is busy inspecting her manicured fingernails, wearing a silk blouse that costs more than my monthly rent. Dominic sits beside her, a portrait of calm authority. His hands are folded neatly on the table, resting right next to a thick stack of legal documents. "We brought you here to finalize the transition," Dominic says. His voice is smooth, devoid of any paternal warmth. It is the tone he uses when liquidating a failing subsidiary. I look at the documents. Mr. Reed adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses, clearing his throat before slipping into his rehearsed legal cadence. "Eden, As you are aware, Louisiana civil law contains very specific provisions regarding forced heirship. Mr. Reed begins, his eyes darting to my father before returning to me. Traditionally, this statute guarantees that children inherit a protected portion of their parents' estate. It is a rigid law designed to prevent disinheritance. He pauses, sliding a thick manila folder across the mahogany expanse. However, Dominic and Vivian have restructured their assets to ensure the longevity of the enterprise. He continues. The domestic maritime holdings, the French Quarter real estate, and the Port Authority contracts have been systematically transferred into a sovereign offshore trust. The new entity is incorporated outside the jurisdiction of the United States. Technically, your parents no longer own the Barbieri fleet. The offshore holding company does. The air in the room grows incredibly thin. I stare at the folder, the intricate legal mechanism snapping into crystal clear focus. They did not just cut me out of a will. They executed a highly sophisticated financial maneuver to bypass a centuries-old state law. By reclassifying the family empire as foreign corporate property rather than a personal estate, the forced heirship protections evaporate. And the sole beneficiaries of this new offshore trust? I ask my voice, a quiet, dangerous calm. Mr. Reed hesitates, but Dominic answers without missing a beat. Giselle and Jace, my father says. They have proven they possess the loyalty required to manage the legacy. You have proven you only care about yourself. My mother finally looks up from her fingernails. Her eyes are flat, reflecting a chilling indifference. We cannot entrust the future of this family to a daughter who refuses to contribute to its survival, Vivian adds. You embarrassed us by withholding the tribute. You made your choice. Now we are making ours. They are giving my birthright, the empire I bled for, to a junior executive who is currently using their ships to run a federal smuggling ring. The sheer irony burns the back of my throat. I look at Dominic. He thinks he has delivered a fatal blow. He thinks this financial execution will force me onto my knees. Mr. Reed slides a silver pen across the table, tapping it against the polished wood. This brings us to the waiver, the lawyer says smoothly. In order to finalize the offshore transfer, we require a signature relinquishing your remaining legal rights to contest the restructuring. It is a standard release form. I do not touch the pen. I lean back in the leather chair. And if I refuse to sign it? I ask. Dominic leans forward, the veneer of polite negotiation vanishing entirely. If you refuse to sign, the Port Authority will suddenly discover a multitude of health and safety violations across your independent logistics fleet. Every single one of your ships will be impounded pending review. Your remaining clients will flee. You will be bankrupt before the end of the fiscal quarter. He is holding my remaining livelihood hostage. The man who taught me how to walk, who taught me how to read the tides, is now looking me in the eye and promising to destroy my entire existence if I do not surrender. I stare at the waiver. My pulse thrums in my ears. I slowly reach out, pick up the documents, and slide them into my briefcase. I snap the brass lock shut. I will review the terms with my own counsel, I say, standing up. Dominic narrows his eyes. You do not have the resources to fight this Eden. I look down at him, my expression unreadable. I have more resources than you think, Father. I turn and walk out of the office. The heavy wooden doors click shut behind me. I stride down the carpeted hallway, stepping into the elevator. When the doors close, the facade finally cracks. My hands shake violently. The betrayal is a physical ache in my chest, a deep, hollow crater where my family used to be. I push through the lobby doors and step out into the searing New Orleans heat. The glaring sunlight bounces off the pavement, blinding me for a fraction of a second. I walk toward my car, the roar of passing traffic buzzing in my ears. As I grip the leather steering wheel, the scent of the nearby river drifts through the air vents. It is a smell of diesel and damp earth. It immediately drags my mind backward, pulling me into a memory from 15 years ago. I am 13 years old. I am sitting in the corner of Dominic's private office at the shipyard. The room is thick with the smell of cigar smoke and aged paper. Dominic is standing over a drafting table, pointing a thick finger at a spread of cargo manifests. He beckons me over. He taps the paper. "Look closely, Eden," he says, his voice a low, rumbling baritone. "The dock bosses swear this shipment arrived full. The paperwork looks perfect, the stamps are legitimate." I squint at the numbers, confused. "Then how do you know they are stealing?" I ask. Dominic smiles, a fierce, predatory grin. He pulls up the crane sensor logs on his computer monitor. "Because men lie, Eden. Paperwork lies, but the physical weight of the steel never lies. You cross-reference the displacement metrics against the declared cargo. Follow the weight, and you will always catch the thief." The memory fades, leaving me sitting in the sweltering heat of my car. I stare blankly through the windshield. Dominic built me. He mentored me. He taught me how to audit the unwritten shadows of the maritime industry. He gave me the exact tools required to dismantle a fraud. And now, oblivious to the fact that I possess a flash drive full of JACE's doctored displacement logs, Dominic has no idea that the weapon he forged is pointed directly at his own chest. I slide the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life. The grief evaporates, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. I am going to tear their offshore trust down to the bedrock. Before I can shift the car into drive, my phone blares from the passenger seat. The caller ID flashes Leo's name. I answer, expecting his usual calm, steady voice, asking about my day. "Eden," Leo says. His voice is tight, breathy, laced with a frantic energy I have never heard from him before. "What is wrong?" I ask, my grip tightening on the phone. "They are shutting us down," he says, the panic bleeding through the receiver. "I am at the riverfront development site. 3 black SUVs just rolled up. The City Planning Commission is swarming the property. They are calling it a snap inspection, but they brought police escorts. They are halting all construction." My heart stalls. Leo's architectural firm is his pride and joy. The riverfront development is a multi-million-dollar contract that his entire company relies on to stay solvent. A forced halt in construction means immediate, catastrophic financial penalties. "They are tearing into the foundation blueprints," Leo continues, the sound of shouting echoing in the background of the call. "They are claiming we used substandard materials. Eden, someone tipped them off with a fabricated report. If we lose this site, we are bankrupt by Friday." The realization hits me like a freight train. Dominic knew I might try to review the waiver. He knew I might try to fight the disinheritance. So he did not just threaten my logistics fleet. He aimed a weapon at the person I love most. He is attacking Leo to break me. The battle has left the docks and spilled into the streets, and the casualties are mounting faster than I can shield them. I tell Leo to stand his ground and not sign a single document until I get there. I drop my phone onto the passenger seat and slam my foot onto the accelerator. The tires squeal against the hot asphalt as I pull out of the law firm parking lot, weaving recklessly through the dense afternoon traffic of the business district. My pulse thrums a frantic rhythm against my collarbone. Dominic knows Leo is my anchor. By sending the City Planning Commission to shut down the riverfront development, my father is sending a clear, ruthless message. No one in my orbit is safe from his reach. I arrive at the construction site 20 minutes later. The scene is a chaotic blur of neon yellow vests and idling municipal vehicles. 3 black sedans bearing the city seal block the main entrance. Leo stands near the foundation trench, his jaw set in a rigid line, surrounded by 4 men in crisp button-down shirts holding clipboards. The inspectors are tearing through blueprints, pointing at support beams and issuing citations with practiced efficiency. I run over the uneven dirt, my heels sinking into the mud. Leo sees me approaching and steps away from the inspectors, meeting me halfway. His face is pale, drawn tight with the sheer stress of watching his livelihood dismantled piece by piece. They revoked the structural permits, Leo says, his voice a low, steady murmur meant only for my ears. They are claiming our steel sourcing does not meet the revised Delta hurricane codes. It is a fabricated violation, Eden. We sourced the exact same materials every other firm uses, but the lead inspector refuses to listen. He handed us a stop work order effective immediately. I look past his shoulder at the lead inspector, a man with a smug, unyielding expression. This is Dominic's handiwork. He pulled a political string, cashed in a favor, and weaponized the city bureaucracy to strangle my fiancé. We will fight this in court, I whisper, squeezing his arm. We will file an injunction. Leo shakes his head slowly. The delay alone will bankrupt us. The investors require steady progress milestones. If this site sits idle for a month, they pull their funding. Your father calculated this perfectly. We spend the rest of the afternoon doing damage control, but the bureaucratic wall is impenetrable. By sunset, the site is locked behind chain-link fences wrapped in yellow caution tape. We drive home to our small Garden District house in total silence, the weight of the day pressing down on us like a physical burden. I wake up the next morning, determined to leverage my own network. I built an independent logistics firm from the ground up. I have allies on the docks, friends in the shipping alliances, and mentors scattered across the Gulf Coast. I brew a pot of dark chicory coffee, sit at my kitchen table, and start making calls. I need a temporary bridge loan for Leo, and I need a new anchor client to replace Meridian Freight. The first call goes to voicemail. The second rings indefinitely. By the 10th call, a sickening realization begins to curdle in my stomach. The people who used to answer my emails within minutes are suddenly unreachable. Industry veterans who attended my wedding just weeks ago are dodging my office line. The Louisiana maritime community is a tight, insular circle built on generational wealth and whispered secrets. Someone has sealed the gates. Around noon, my phone finally vibrates. It is Aunt Celeste, my mother's younger sister, a prominent socialite who sits on half the charity boards in New Orleans. I answer quickly, hoping for a lifeline. Eden, Celeste says, her voice hushed and hurried as if she is terrified someone might overhear her. You need to stop calling people. You are making it worse. Making what worse, I ask, gripping the edge of the kitchen table. There is a long pause on the other end of the line. The silence stretches thick with unspoken judgment. Dominic and Vivian told everyone the truth, Celeste finally whispers, her tone laced with deep disappointment. They told the family why they really missed the wedding. They told the Harbor Commission why you are being phased out of the shipping lanes. My chest tightens. What truth, Celeste? They know about the missing funds, Eden. Your father showed the board the discrepancies in the company ledgers. You embezzled from the family trust to pay for that extravagant ceremony. Dominic is trying to keep the police out of it to protect you, but you stole from your own blood. You are a liability. The accusation hits me like a physical strike. I drop the phone onto the table. Embezzlement. They did not just ice me out. They launched a calculated, highly coordinated whisper campaign across high society to obliterate my professional integrity. In the logistics industry, trust is the only currency that matters. A coordinator accused of stealing funds is permanently blacklisted. Dominic is framing me for the very financial crimes he and JACE are currently committing. He is turning me into the scapegoat to hide his own offshore tariff evasion. The final crushing blow arrives via private courier 3 hours later. It is a thick envelope made of heavy, cream-colored cardstock. I tear it open. Inside is a formal letter from the steering committee of the Bayou Maritime Charity Gala. 5 years ago, I founded this event to raise funds for coastal restoration and wetland preservation. I poured my heart into building the gala, turning it into the premier social event of the shipping season. The letter is typed in a cold, elegant font. It informs me that, due to recent unsettling financial allegations, my presence at the upcoming gala would be a profound distraction. The committee has voted to rescind my invitation and remove my name from the founder's plaque. Vivian Barbieri has graciously stepped in to host the event in my absence. I sink onto the living room sofa, the formal letter slipping from my fingers. The isolation is total. My parents have dismantled my career, hijacked my charity, ostracized me from my extended family, and crippled Leo's architectural firm. They have stripped away every layer of my armor. That evening, a torrential Gulf storm rolls into the city. The sky turns the color of bruised iron. Heavy, unrelenting rain lashes against the windows, the wind howling through the ancient oak trees lining the street. The power flickers, leaving the house bathed in the dim golden glow of a few scattered candles. I sit on the covered back porch, watching the rain hammer the stone courtyard. The warm, damp air smells of ozone and wet earth. The despair is a heavy shroud threatening to pull me under. The screen door creaks open. Leo steps onto the porch carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee and a greasy paper bag from Café du Monde. He sets the mugs down, tears open the bag, and hands me a warm beignet buried in thick white powdered sugar. He sits beside me on the wooden bench, his shoulder pressing firmly against mine. The heat radiating from him cuts through the chill of the storm. We sit in silence for a long time, chewing the sweet pastry, watching the water flood the brick patio. "They want us to break," Leo says. His voice a low, steady rumble over the sound of the rain. "They are applying maximum pressure so we panic, surrender, and sign whatever waiver they put in front of us." I look down at my hands. The powdered sugar coats my fingertips. I have nothing left to fight them with, Leo. They took my clients, they ruined your site, they poisoned the entire city against me. Leo turns to me, his eyes catching the faint candlelight filtering through the window. He reaches out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my damp cheek. "You still have your mind, Eden," he says quietly, "and you still have the truth. We do not retreat. We do not beg. We let them think they have won, and then we strike back." His unwavering resolve acts as a spark, igniting the cold, calculating fury resting at the bottom of my stomach. He is right. Dominic relies on fear. He relies on his targets folding before the final bell rings. I finish the coffee, kiss Leo on the cheek, and walk back inside the house. I go straight to my home office. The rain continues to batter the glass panes. I sit at my desk, boot up my encrypted laptop, and reach into my jacket pocket. I pull out the generic black USB drive the veteran harbor master slipped to me at the port. The Chekhov's gun resting quietly in the shadows. I plug the drive into the port. The screen flickers to life. I open the raw doc logs, bypassing the surface-level manifests and digging straight into the metadata. I pull up the registration codes for the colossal shipping vessels JACE has been directing through Sector 9. I cross-reference the ship registration numbers with the international maritime databases. The puzzle pieces snap together with terrifying clarity. These vessels are not registered to established commercial freight companies. They are leased through a tangled web of anonymous shell corporations based in Panama and the Cayman Islands. I isolate the cargo classifications. The inbound manifests declare the containers are filled with cheap, low-tariff agricultural textiles. But the physical displacement weights recorded by the cranes prove the containers are carrying incredibly heavy, high-value industrial machinery. The tax discrepancy is staggering. By misclassifying the cargo and falsifying the weight, JACE and Dominic are evading millions of dollars in federal customs tariffs on every single shipment. This is not a simple case of nepotism or corporate sabotage. This is a massive coordinated federal crime. They are defrauding the United States government, laundering the profits through the offshore trust they tried to force me to sign away. I stare at the glowing monitor, my pulse roaring in my ears. Dominic built a fortress of lies to destroy my reputation. But embedded in this tiny flash drive is the dynamite required to vaporize his entire legacy. I do not just have the power to clear my name. I have the evidence to send my father and my future brother-in-law to federal prison. I close the laptop, a sharp, dangerous smile touching my lips. Tomorrow I will play the role of the defeated daughter. But the tide has officially turned. The morning sun pierces through the lingering storm clouds, casting long, sharp shadows across the damp courtyard. I sit at my desk, the black flash drive resting beside my coffee mug. The rain washed the world clean overnight, and it seemingly washed away the last remnants of my hesitation. The ingrained desire to please the patriarch of the Barbieri family, the crushing guilt of defying my own blood, evaporates like mist burning off the bayou. I am no longer a grieving daughter begging for scraps of affection. I am a strategist, mapping a battlefield. To defeat a man who controls the tides, you do not fight the current. You let him drown in his own hubris. I open my laptop and scan the original Vanguard and Read waiver into my secure terminal. Using a high-grade PDF editor, I spend 2 hours meticulously altering the complex legal syntax. I extract the exact civil code citations governing Louisiana forced airship and the offshore trust transfers. I replace those specific alphanumeric strings with obsolete municipal codes regulating maritime salvage rights. I adjust the font kerning, match the margins, and replicate the precise layout of the original document. To the naked eye, the formatting and the terrifying legalese remain identical. Legally, the paper I am about to sign surrenders nothing. It is a decoy, a red herring designed to feed a predator. I pick up my phone and dial my father's private number. I wait for 3 rings before he answers. I force my breath to hitch modulating my vocal cords to mimic sheer exhaustion and defeat. "I cannot fight you anymore," I whisper into the receiver, letting my voice crack perfectly on the final syllable. "You took my clients. You ruined the charity. I will sign the papers." Dominic chuckles. It is a low, vibrating sound of pure triumph echoing through the speaker. He has spent his life breaking competitors, and he believes he just broke me. "Meet me at Café Amélie in an hour," Dominic instructs, his tone brisk and commanding. "Bring the documents." The cafe courtyard is lush, hidden behind towering brick walls, dripping with ivy in the heart of the French Quarter. The air smells of roasted chicory and damp fern. Dominic sits at a wrought iron table in the far corner, sipping a dark espresso. He wears his triumph like a tailored suit. He exudes a dangerous, quiet power. Noticeably, he did not bring Arthur Reed. His arrogance is his ultimate blind spot. Hubris dictates that he does not need a seasoned lawyer to manage a broken, desperate daughter. He believes I am too terrified to launch a counterattack. I sit across from him, keeping my eyes downcast, playing the role he cast for me. I pull the forged stack of papers from my leather bag and slide them across the cold metal table. I uncap my pen. My hand trembles a calculated performance as I ink my signature onto the dotted line. Dominic snatches the papers. He barely glances at the text, his eyes scanning only for the blue ink of my signature. He folds the document and slides it into the breast pocket of his jacket. "You always were stubborn, Eden," he says, his tone dripping with condescension. "But the Delta always wins. Take a few weeks off. Try to salvage your failing marriage." He stands and walks away, leaving me alone at the table. He does not look back. He believes the war is over. He believes he secured his offshore empire and neutralized his only threat. He has no idea I just handed him an empty shell. buying myself the critical time needed to load a far deadlier weapon. I drive straight back to my house in the Garden District. I lock the heavy wooden doors, draw the thick velvet blinds, and brew another pot of dark coffee. For the next 12 hours, I dive into the raw dock logs stored on the harbor master's USB drive. The sheer volume of data is staggering, but my mind sharpens, locking into the familiar rhythmic flow of logistical analysis. I trace the Panama Shell companies registered to JACE. I match the fraudulent container weights to the federal customs declarations. I compile dense, irrefutable spreadsheets detailing the exact financial discrepancies. The mechanics of their fraud snap into terrifying focus. JACE routed the high-tariff industrial machinery through the Cayman Islands, falsifying the bill of lading to register the cargo as low-grade agricultural feed. This maneuver slashed their federal tax burden by 80%. But the crane sensors caught the true physical burden of the cargo when the ships docked in Louisiana. The steel did not lie. I calculate the millions in evaded federal taxes. Every keystroke is a nail in their coffin. I package the evidence into a pristine digital dossier. I encrypt the files, wrapping them in dual authentication protocols, and upload the entire arsenal to a secure, decentralized cloud server hosted overseas. Near midnight, my eyes burn from staring at the glowing monitor. I rub my temples, realizing a crucial piece of the timeline is missing. I need a physical client ledger, a specific book of cargo invoices stored in my mobile office trailer at the port. That ledger contains the final signature JACE used to authorize the ghost shipments. The streets of New Orleans are deserted as I drive toward the industrial sector. The yellow sodium street lights reflect off the wet asphalt, casting an eerie metallic glow over the road. I pull into the gravel lot of Terminal Delta. The heavy humidity wraps around me as I step out of the car. The port is unusually quiet, the distant hum of river barges providing a steady, low-frequency soundtrack to the night. I walk toward my trailer, my boots crunching softly against the loose gravel. My pulse skips a beat. The heavy metal door of my office trailer hangs open, swaying gently in the night breeze. The steel padlock lies discarded on the ground, sheared clean through by industrial bolt cutters. I step cautiously inside, reaching for the light switch. The fluorescent bulbs flicker to life, illuminating a war zone. The smell of ozone and shattered plastic hangs in the stagnant air. Filing cabinets lie overturned, client files strewn across the floor like fallen snow. My desktop monitors are cracked, the screens resembling spiderwebs of broken glass. I look toward the corner of the room. The metal casing of my local server rack has been pried open with brutal force. The internal hard drives are pulled from their bays and smashed to pieces on the linoleum floor. The metal platters are dented, destroyed, with precise, heavy strikes from a crowbar. Someone realized the raw logs were missing from the harbor master's terminal. JACE panicked. He sent someone to silence the data, intending to wipe my servers and destroy any lingering trace of his smuggling ring. I stand amid the wreckage of my livelihood. A normal person would collapse in terror, realizing the lengths these men will go to protect their secrets. Instead, a slow, razor-sharp smile touches my lips. They are hunting ghosts. Their destruction is a confession of their panic. They shattered plastic and metal, believing they erased the threat, unaware that the true evidence is already floating in the cloud, far beyond the reach of their crowbars. The summons arrives via a courier less than an hour after I leave the ruined shell of my port office. It is a thick cream envelope bearing a gold-embossed crest. The note inside contains a single line of text. The St. Jude Club, 4 o'clock. Do not keep me waiting. The St. Jude Club is an archaic institution nestled deep in the Garden District. It is a private cigar lounge where the old money of New Orleans gathers to carve up the maritime economy over neat bourbon and hand-rolled tobacco. Women are technically permitted inside, but the unspoken rules of the Southern aristocracy dictate they remain in the dining room. The back parlor, with its heavy velvet drapes and carved mahogany walls, is a sanctuary strictly reserved for the patriarchs of the Delta. I pull my car to the curb and hand my keys to the valet. The afternoon heat is a sweltering, oppressive force, but the moment I step through the heavy brass doors of the club, the temperature plunges. The air conditioning is fierce, carrying the rich, earthy aroma of aged cedar, burning tobacco, and citrus polish. I walk past the maitre d' without offering my name. I know exactly where my father holds court. I push open the double doors leading into the back parlor. The room is dimly lit by antique brass lamps. A few shipping magnates and oil executives sit in plush wingback chairs, murmuring in low, conspiratorial tones. The conversation halts for a fraction of a second as I enter, a dozen pairs of eyes darting toward the intrusion before politely looking away. Dominic sits in the far corner, cloaked in the shadows of the room. He nurses a crystal glass of amber liquid, a lit cigar resting in the heavy glass ashtray beside him. He does not rise when I approach. He merely gestures to the empty leather chair opposite his own. I sit down, keeping my posture rigid. I fold my hands in my lap, hiding the slight tremor running through my fingers. "You look tired," Eden Dominic says, his voice a low, gravelly hum that blends seamlessly with the ambient noise of the parlor. I hold his gaze, refusing to offer a polite deflection. "Tell me why I am here." Dominic takes a slow, deliberate sip from his glass. He sets it down on the polished table, the ice clinking softly against the crystal. The polite corporate facade he wore at the law firm is gone. The mask has slipped, revealing the ruthless, unyielding enforcer underneath. He reaches into the inner pocket of his tailored suit jacket and pulls out a folded document. He smooths it flat against the table and slides it toward me. "Read it," he commands. I pick up the paper. The letterhead bears the official seal of the New Orleans City Planning Commission. It is an internal draft of a structural negligence report dated today. My eyes scan the dense, bureaucratic text. The report details severe safety violations at the riverfront development site. It claims the steel support beams Leo sourced are fundamentally compromised, citing fabricated metallurgical stress tests. The final paragraph recommends the immediate permanent revocation of Leo's architectural license and the initiation of a criminal fraud investigation. My breath catches in my throat, a sharp, painful inhalation that I cannot mask. The lead inspector is a very pragmatic man, Dominic murmurs, leaning back into his chair. He understands the importance of rigorous municipal oversight. Once he files that report into the public record tomorrow morning, your fiancé is finished. His firm will collapse under the weight of the litigation. The investors will sue him into oblivion. You paid a city official to frame an innocent man, I say, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Dominic smiles, a cold, predatory stretching of his lips. I simply requested a thorough review of local construction standards. The inspector found what he was paid to find. The Delta is a dangerous place for independent contractors who lack the proper protection. He leans forward, resting his forearms on the table. The scent of his cigar smoke drifts across the space between us, thick and suffocating. "You thought you could outmaneuver me by bringing a fake waiver to Café Amelie," Dominic says softly. My heart stalls for a fraction of a second. Did you truly believe Arthur Reed would not authenticate the signature and verify the civil codes on that document? My father continues, his eyes locking onto mine with terrifying precision. "It was a clever delay tactic, Eden. I will give you credit for the audacity. But stalling only works if you have a viable exit strategy. You have nothing." He knows about the decoy waiver. He discovered the deception, and instead of calling me in a rage, he orchestrated this precise, devastating counterattack. He targeted Leo to ensure I had no ground left to stand on. I need the $40,000, Dominic states, his tone, shifting from mockery to a hard, unyielding demand. The loyalty tribute. You will wire the funds directly to JACE's offshore account by 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. If the transfer clears, the inspector will discard this draft and the stop work order on the riverfront site will be lifted. Leo gets his career back. If I refuse, I ask, tasting bile in the back of my throat. Dominic taps his index finger against the fabricated report. If you refuse, I ruin the man you love. I salt the earth beneath his feet. He will never draft a blueprint in this state again. I stare at the man sitting across from me. For 28 years, I operated under the illusion that beneath his ruthless business tactics, there was a core of paternal affection. I believed that, despite his severe expectations, he possessed a fundamental loyalty to his own blood. Sitting in the dim light of the cigar club, looking at the fabricated document designed to obliterate my future husband, the final frayed tether of that illusion snaps. The man who raised me is gone. He is nothing but a cornered animal wearing a tailored suit. He desperately needs that $40,000 to patch the bleeding hole in his federal smuggling ledger, and he is willing to destroy an innocent architect to get it. The grief evaporates, leaving a vast, freezing expanse of clarity in my chest. I cannot wire the funds today, I say, keeping my voice low and defeated. The performance must be flawless. I let my shoulders slump, breaking eye contact to stare at the polished wood of the table. I tied up my liquid assets, trying to secure a bridge loan for Leo's firm. I have to liquidate a mutual fund to access that kind of cash. It takes 24 hours to clear, the holding period. Dominic studies my face, searching for a trace of deception. The silence stretches thick and heavy. I will bring a certified cashier's check tomorrow night, I continue, forcing a slight tremor into my hands. To the engagement party. I will hand it directly to JACE. My father watches the tremor in my fingers. He interprets the physical reaction as pure, unadulterated fear. His posture relaxes the tension draining from his broad shoulders. He believes the threat of Leo's destruction has finally broken my spirit. Tomorrow night, Dominic agrees, pulling the negligence report across the table and slipping it back into his pocket. Giselle will be thrilled to see you supporting her union. Do not make the mistake of testing my patience again, Eden. The next time you try to hand me a forged document, I will not bother calling a meeting. I will simply bury you. I stand up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from my skirt. I nod once, a gesture of total submission, and turn toward the exit. I walk out of the back parlor, past the murmuring executives, and push through the heavy brass doors into the sweltering Louisiana evening. The heat hits my skin, but I feel incredibly cold, my mind operating with a sharp, lethal focus. Dominic thinks he has cornered me. He thinks the fabricated negligence report is a chain around my neck. He does not realize that I have the raw dock logs stored safely in the cloud, out of the reach of his crowbars and his hired thugs. He does not realize that his demand for the cashier's check is the final piece of evidence I need to link him directly to the tariff evasion scheme. I retrieve my car from the valet and slide into the driver's seat. I grip the steering wheel, a slow, dangerous smile curving my lips. Tomorrow night, the elite of New Orleans society will gather at the plantation estate to celebrate my sister. They will drink champagne toast to the future and expect me to bow my head in defeat. They expect a beaten daughter carrying a tribute. They have no idea I am walking through their front door with a lit match. The Belle Rive plantation sits 30 miles outside the city limits, a sprawling monument to Southern aristocracy hiding deep within the Louisiana wetlands. Gas lanterns line the winding cobblestone driveway, casting flickering, erratic shadows across the sweeping branches of ancient oak trees. Spanish moss hangs from the heavy limbs like tattered silk curtains, barely swaying in the stifling, humid night air. Valets in crisp white shirts hurry to open the doors of imported luxury sedans, welcoming the elite tier of Gulf Coast society to the celebration. Inside the cabin of our car, Leo turns off the ignition. The sudden absence of the engine noise leaves a heavy, expectant quiet in the dark space between us. He turns his head to look at me, his gaze tracing the outline of my attire. I am wearing my wedding dress. It is the same $10,000 silk gown I wore 2 weeks ago when I walked down the cathedral aisle alone. But it is no longer white. Over the past 3 days, I submerged the pristine fabric into vats of industrial-grade black dye. The delicate silk absorbed the dark pigment, transforming into a deep, lightless shadow. The transformation destroyed the delicate lace detailing and stiffened the flowing train, turning a symbol of joyous union into a garment of mourning. Leo reaches across the center console and wraps his strong fingers around my hand. He does not ask if I am sure. He knows the battle lines were drawn the moment my father handed me that fabricated negligence report. We step out of the car together. The damp heat hits my skin instantly, carrying the rich, earthy scent of river mud, roasted oysters, and expensive floral arrangements spilling from the estate gardens. We walk toward the grand entrance. The colossal double doors are propped wide open, revealing a foyer bathed in the golden fractured glow of a 3-tier crystal chandelier. The room is packed with politicians, maritime executives, and old money socialites, holding flutes of expensive champagne. The dull roar of polite laughter and clinking glass spills out onto the porch. As I cross the threshold, the conversations nearest to the door falter. The silence ripples outward, spreading through the dense crowd like a stone dropped into a still pond. People turn to stare, their champagne flutes hovering frozen near their lips. They recognize the distinct silhouette of the designer dress. They register the stark, unyielding black fabric. Whispers ignite, sharp and frantic, buzzing like hornets in the warm air. Before we can even reach the edge of the main ballroom, a figure steps into our path, blocking the corridor. It is Vivian. My mother wears an emerald green evening gown that perfectly highlights her fresh Hawaiian tan. Her smile is tight and brittle, a polite, societal mask shielding her profound, seething irritation. She scans my dark attire from head to toe, her eyes narrowing in sheer disgust. "This is a pathetic cry for attention," Eden Vivian murmurs, keeping her voice low so the nearby guests cannot decipher her words. "A petty theatrical stunt from a jealous sibling. You are embarrassing yourself in front of the entire Port Authority." I let her speak. I stand tall, absorbing her venom without flinching. I understand the exquisite dramatic irony wrapping around us right now. She looks at my ruined gown and assumes I am throwing a tantrum. She thinks I am mourning the loss of my wedding day, grieving the family that abandoned me at the altar. She does not realize I am dressed for the funeral of her empire. Vivian steps closer to the cloying scent of her signature gardenia perfume, masking the stale air of the foyer. She demands we step into the private study down the hall. She asks for the cashier's check, the $40,000 tribute Dominic extorted from me to fix their hidden offshore tariff penalty. She wants to conclude the dirty transaction quietly, out of sight, maintaining her pristine social facade while pocketing the funds required to keep her husband out of federal prison. Before I can respond to her demand, a shrill, piercing voice cuts through the ambient noise of the gathering. Giselle storms across the polished hardwood floor, shoving past a group of startled regional brokers. My younger sister wears a custom pearl-encrusted white gown, looking every bit the radiant bride-in-waiting. However, her face is twisted in an ugly, entitled fury that shatters her delicate image. "What is she doing here?" Giselle hisses, pointing a manicured finger directly at my chest. "Why are you trying to ruin my night with this toxic energy?" I look at the sibling I spent my entire life protecting. I shielded her from Dominic's temper, fixed her logistical errors at the shipping firm, and supported her endless whims. Now she looks at me like a stranger, trespassing on her property. Giselle does not wait for an explanation. She signals to the armed private security guards standing near the catering tables. She shouts for them to escort me off the premises immediately. She plays the wounded victim for the surrounding crowd, loudly complaining that I always try to steal her spotlight, claiming I am bitter, unstable, and desperate to ruin her happiness because my own life is a failure. Jace appears right behind her, a smug, triumphant grin playing on his lips. He places a calming, possessive hand on Giselle's shoulder, playing the protective partner for the watching audience. He looks at Leo, attempting to assert dominance, but Leo simply stares back with cold, unwavering indifference. Jace shifts his gaze to me. He asks if I brought the envelope his father-in-law requested. He thinks the extortion worked. He believes the threat against Leo's architectural firm broke my resolve, forcing me to empty my savings to save my future husband. He is eager to take the money and finalize his smuggling cover-up. The security guards step forward, their hands resting cautiously on the radios clipped to their belts. They hesitate, unsure how to handle a physical altercation involving the eldest daughter of the host. The tension in the foyer is suffocating. The wealthy guests watch with bated breath, their eyes wide, eager to witness the final, humiliating collapse of the Barbieri outcast. I do not break under the pressure. I do not raise my voice or argue with the sisters screaming in my face. I reach into my leather clutch and pull out a thick manila folder. The heavy paper rests in my hands, holding the digital keys to their imminent destruction. I look at Vivian, then at Jace, and finally settle my gaze on Giselle. I curve my lips into a slow, bright smile that does not reach my eyes. I brought a very special engagement gift, I announce. My voice is clear and resonant, carrying easily over the quiet crowd. I declare that a gift of this magnitude cannot be handed over in the shadows of a dark study. It represents years of family history. I insist it must be presented in the light in front of everyone they hold dear. Vivian reaches for my arm, her manicured nails poised to dig into my skin. She realizes something is fundamentally wrong. The script she wrote for this evening is unraveling. Her eyes widen, the polite mask fracturing to reveal genuine panic. I pull my arm out of her reach. I bypass the hesitating security guards. The sheer, unapologetic confidence in my stride paralyzes them. I walk straight through the parted sea of guests, my black silk train gliding smoothly over the antique floorboards. People step back, clearing a path for me as I enter the main ballroom. A jazz band plays softly in the far corner, but the musicians slowly stop playing as I approach the grand stage. I climb the wooden steps, my heels clicking a steady, ominous rhythm. I stand in front of the microphone stand, positioned in the center of the platform. 200 pairs of eyes lock onto me. Across the cavernous room, standing near the mahogany bar, Dominic turns around. He holds a glass of bourbon, frozen halfway to his mouth. The entire hierarchy of the Louisiana shipping industry waits in breathless, suspended anticipation. I reach out. I tap the metal grill of the microphone with my index finger. The sharp, percussive thud echoes through the massive speakers, bouncing off the high ceilings. The room falls dead silent. I stand at the center of the grand stage. The silence in the Belle Reve ballroom is profound. 200 guests hold their collective breath, waiting for the punchline they assume I am about to deliver. The heavy humidity outside presses against the tall French windows, but inside, the air conditioning freezes the sweat on my skin. I lean toward the microphone. The metal grill is cold against my lips. "Good evening, everyone," I say. My voice booms through the state-of-the-art sound system, echoing off the crystal chandeliers and rolling over the crowd. I keep my tone steady, devoid of the hysteria my mother so desperately wanted to provoke. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to my parents, Dominic and Vivienne Barbieri. I continue. I pause, letting my gaze sweep over the sea of regional brokers, port commissioners, and generational wealth. I thank them for hosting such an extravagant celebration tonight. It is truly remarkable, especially considering they could not find the time to attend my wedding 2 weeks ago. A low murmur rolls through the crowd. I push forward before the noise can build into a disruption. As many of you know, I walked down the aisle of the cathedral alone, I announce, keeping my eyes locked on the front row of elite socialites. My parents were busy sipping vintage champagne on a catamaran in the Pacific. They informed me via a midnight text message that my marriage was trivial compared to Giselle's need for a tropical mental health break. Gasps ripple across the cavernous room. These are old money Southerners. They play ruthless games in the corporate boardrooms, but public family abandonment violates their sacred social code. I see a prominent shipyard owner turn and glare directly at Dominic. Vivian shrinks back her emerald gown, suddenly looking like a target rather than a crown. Giselle stands frozen near the catering tables, her face draining of color. She opens her mouth to scream, but the sheer shock paralyzes her vocal cords. I reach into the manila folder I carried past the hesitating security guards. I pull out a sleek digital tablet and a small connector cable. The event technicians left the podium fully wired for a planned romantic slideshow of the happy couple. I plug my device into the primary dock. I am not here to complain about hurt feelings, I explain, tapping the glass screen to bypass the security lock. I am here to present my engagement gift. I want to show all of you exactly how the Barbieri shipping empire operates behind closed doors. Behind me, the sprawling digital display board illuminates. It spans 20 feet across the back wall of the stage, bright enough to cast a harsh white glow over the entire dance floor. I do not project the federal customs data. The offshore tariff evasion is a lethal weapon, but deploying it now would bring federal agents to this party before I finish dismantling their social facade. That ammunition stays hidden for the climax. Instead, I open the local files. The first slide appears on the giant screen. It is a series of internal emails sent from Vivienne's personal account to Aunt Celeste and several other high-ranking charity board members. I highlight the specific paragraphs in bright yellow marker. The text is blown up impossible to miss. My mother spent the last week orchestrating a whisper campaign, I declare, stepping aside so everyone has a clear view of the projection. She told many of you that I embezzled company funds to finance my trivial wedding. She used that fabricated lie to revoke my invitation to the Bayou Maritime Gala, a charity event I built from the ground up. The screen shifts, displaying the official bank audits of the family trust, verified by an independent accounting firm. The ledgers are pristine, showing zero missing capital. The embezzlement was a calculated fiction, I state, my voice ringing with hard authority, designed to isolate me, destroy my professional reputation, and distract you from the real theft happening on the docks of South Louisiana. The crowd begins to buzz a hive of angry, confused voices. Industry peers who dodged my phone calls yesterday now stare at the screen in horror, realizing they were weaponized by a bitter matriarch. I swipe my finger across the tablet. The display changes again. This brings us to the groom, I say, fixing my eyes on JACE. JACE coasts through life on a fabricated resume. He attended elite universities on his father's generous donations, graduating without retaining a single ounce of actual logistical knowledge. He relies on exhausted subordinates to mask his profound incompetence. The screen fills with internal memorandums leaked from Gulfstar Logistics. They detail critical routing failures, lost cargo shipments, and plummeting quarterly revenue, directly tied to JACE's management sector. The numbers are abysmal. He was weeks away from being terminated by his own board of directors. Jace's career was sinking, I explained to the captivated audience. He lacked the skill to save himself, so he cried to his future father-in-law for a bailout. The final set of documents flashes onto the display. They are classified communications between Dominic and the Port Authority Zoning Committee. They outline the exact process Dominic used to suddenly declare my deep-water shipping lanes as restricted ecological preservation zones. Dominic Barbieri did not care about marshland erosion, I declare, pointing at the damning emails. He abused his political seat to legally blockade my fleet. He forced Meridian Freight to transfer their multi-million-dollar account directly to Gulfstar Logistics. He engineered a bureaucratic siege to bankrupt his own daughter, all to prop up a failing junior executive who could not secure a single client on his own merit. The shipyard owners and freight brokers in the rooms stiffen. Nepotism is common in the Delta, but sabotaging legitimate maritime commerce through corrupt zoning laws threatens every single business owner in attendance. Dominic did not just betray me. He rigged the regional economy. The men who previously respected my father now look at him with deep, lingering suspicion. Jace realizes his carefully curated reputation is evaporating live on screen. The elite of New Orleans are reading the exact metrics of his professional failures. His face flushes a dark mottled red. Panic overrides his minimal sense of decorum. "Shut it off!" Jace screams, his voice cracking like a terrified child. He charges toward the grand stage, desperate to unplug the audiovisual equipment. He abandons Giselle, shoving past a group of elderly socialites in his frantic sprint. His polished leather shoes slip on the antique hardwood floor. He does not look where he is going. Positioned at the base of the wooden stairs is a towering, extravagant floral arrangement. Dozens of white hydrangeas and rare orchids overflow from a heavy crystal vase perched on a tall marble pedestal. Jace lunges for the cables trailing down the side of the platform. His foot catches the edge of the marble pedestal. The impact is loud and clumsy. The pedestal tips backward. The heavy crystal vase shatters against the floorboards with a deafening crash. Gallons of stagnant flower water, shards of thick glass, and crushed white petals explode across the polished wood. Jace loses his balance entirely. He pitches forward, arms flailing in a desperate attempt to catch himself. He falls hard onto the ground, sliding right into the center of the wreckage. The designer suit he wore to project dominance is instantly soaked in dirty water and littered with ruined flowers. He scrambles onto his hands and knees, dripping and pathetic. A sharp shard of crystal tears a long gash across the knee of his expensive trousers. The entire ballroom watches his humiliating descent. No one steps forward to help him up. The silence returns heavier and far more punishing than before. The man who threatened to sink my shipping contracts is now crawling through a puddle of his own making, stripped of his dignity in front of the very people he tried to impress. From the back of the room, Dominic's voice shatters the quiet. "Cut the power!" Dominic bellows. His face is contorted in a rage so pure it borders on feral. "Security, kill the main breakers, right now!" Two armed guards rush toward the utility hallway. Seconds later, a heavy mechanical clunk echoes through the walls. The towering digital screen behind me dies, fading to a dull, lifeless gray. The crystal chandeliers overhead wink out, plunging the grand ballroom into sudden shadows. The only illumination comes from the flickering gas lanterns mounted on the outdoor patio, casting long, dancing silhouettes across the stunned crowd. Dominic thinks the darkness will save him. He thinks killing the power erases the evidence, but the damage is irreversible. The truth is already burned into the minds of every port commissioner and industry leader in the room. The illusion of the untouchable Barbieri dynasty lies shattered on the floor right next to Jace. I step away from the dead microphone, close my manila folder, and walk down the opposite set of stairs. Leo is waiting for me at the bottom, his eyes shining with fierce pride. We walk toward the exit, hand in hand, parting the sea of guests who now stare at me with undeniable respect. We leave the screaming, fractured family behind us in the dark. But as we step out onto the humid front porch, I see the glow of Dominic's smartphone illuminating his furious face through the window. He is not calling for the lights to be restored. He is dialing the city planning inspector. The social war is over, but the bureaucratic execution of Leo's architectural firm has just been triggered. The ballroom remains plunged in sudden shadows, illuminated only by the erratic flickering glow of the patio gas lanterns. The transition from blinding digital light to archaic firelight casts long, distorted silhouettes across the mahogany walls. The air conditioning hums to a halt, allowing the heavy, oppressive delta humidity to seep through the French doors. The stench of spilled, stagnant floral water from JACE's clumsy fall mingles with the expensive perfumes of the trapped guests. I keep my grip on Leo's hand firm. We navigate toward the grand double doors. The crowd parts for us not out of fear, but out of a stunned electric reverence. Before we can cross the threshold into the foyer, a broad figure steps into our path. Dominic blocks the exit. His chest heaves with ragged, uneven breaths. The polished veneer of the untouchable shipping magnate is gone, replaced by the raw, cornered desperation of a man watching his empire crumble. His dark eyes lock onto mine, burning with a toxic mixture of hatred and disbelief. "You think a slideshow changes who controls this state?" Dominic hisses. His voice is a low, guttural rasp, stripped of its usual commanding resonance. "You think projecting a few emails erases my power? I built the docks you walk on. I own the political infrastructure of this city. You are a naive, ungrateful child, and I am going to bury you so deep in litigation you will never see the sun again." I do not shrink away. I meet his furious stare with cool, analytical indifference. "You built a fortress on quicksand," I reply softly, "and the tide is coming in." A sudden movement catches my peripheral vision. Vivian materializes from the gloom. Her emerald gown rustles sharply against the hardwood floor. Her face, usually a mask of pristine societal grace, is contorted into a grotesque display of unfiltered rage. She does not speak. She does not offer a cutting remark. She simply raises her hand and strikes my face. The sharp, percussive crack of her palm connecting with my cheek echoes through the hushed foyer. My head snaps to the side. A blooming heat spreads across my skin, followed by the metallic taste of blood where my teeth clipped the inside of my lip. Leo instantly steps in front of me, his posture shifting into a defensive, unyielding wall between me and my mother. His jaw clenches, his eyes flashing with a dangerous, protective instinct. But I place a hand on his forearm, silently urging him to hold his ground. I turn my face back toward Vivian. I do not touch my stinging cheek. I offer her a slow, chilling smile. At that exact moment, the foyer erupts in a blinding sequence of unnatural light. Flashes pulse from every direction. The high society guests, the regional brokers, and the port commissioners have their smartphones raised. They are not dialing for help. They are recording. In the modern era of the Southern aristocracy, scandal is the most valuable currency, and Vivian just handed them a fortune. The whispered conversations escalate into a cacophony of judgment. The glowing screens of dozens of devices illuminate the dark room like a swarm of fireflies, capturing every angle of my mother's unhinged assault. The very people Vivian spent weeks manipulating are now documenting her breakdown in high-definition video. Aunt Celeste steps out from the crowd, her expression laced with profound disgust. She looks at her sister, shaking her head slowly. "You lied to us," Celeste states, her voice slicing through the chaos. "You sat in my drawing room and swore Eden stole from the family trust. You used us to ruin her charity gala while you were busy protecting a fraud. Vivian opens her mouth, stammering desperately, grasping for the elegant control she wielded just an hour ago. Celeste, please, you must understand the pressure we are under. Eden is trying to ruin her sister. Celeste turns her back on my mother, an unmistakable gesture of social excommunication. Do not call me, she says coldly over her shoulder. The rest of the room follows suit. The elite guests begin to turn away, retreating into the shadows, muttering their disdain. The whisper campaign my parents launched to destroy my reputation has rapidly reversed course. By tomorrow morning, the footage of Vivian striking me in a fit of guilty rage will spread across every private country club and shipping boardroom in New Orleans. Their social capital is bankrupt. I look at my father one last time. He stands frozen, watching the wealthy allies he cultivated for decades turn their backs on his family. Leo and I walk past them. We step out of the heavy double doors and onto the sprawling front porch. The damp, stifling heat of the Louisiana night wraps around us, accompanied by the deafening chorus of cicadas hidden in the marshland. We descend the brick steps, my black silk train dragging across the damp cobblestones. A profound sense of liberation washes over me. The suffocating weight of trying to earn their love is gone, replaced by the crisp, clean air of independence. We navigate the winding gravel path, leaving the illuminated plantation house behind us. We reach our parked car at the edge of the circular driveway. The night air feels heavy with impending rain. I reach for the door handle, but a sudden, booming voice echoes across the manicured lawn. I turn around. Dominic stands at the edge of the grand veranda, illuminated by a flickering gas lamp. He holds his smartphone pressed tightly against his ear. He is not calling security. He is not attempting to salvage the party. He is deploying his final, desperate weapon. Dominic makes eye contact with me, ensuring I can hear every word he shouts into the receiver. Commissioner Dominic barks, his voice carrying easily over the humid breeze. Yes, I am authorizing the release. File the structural negligence report on the riverfront development site. Right now. I want the stop work order made permanent by sunrise. Revoke the architect's licenses. He lowers the phone, a cruel, vindictive sneer twisting his features. He nods at me, a silent promise of total annihilation. My heart stalls in my chest. The social victory I just secured crumbles under the weight of his bureaucratic retaliation. Dominic is making good on his extortion threat. He is officially triggering the legal execution of Leo's firm. The City Planning Commission will process the fabricated safety violations, plunging Leo into insurmountable litigation and immediate financial ruin. The investors will flee, the contracts will dissolve, and the man who stood by my side will lose everything he has built. I slide into the passenger seat, closing the door against the oppressive night air. Leo starts the engine, the headlights piercing the dark canopy of the oak trees. His face is bathed in the faint glow of the dashboard, his expression tight, absorbing the reality of the phone call we just witnessed. My father thinks he holds the ultimate trump card. He believes destroying my future husband is the key to forcing my surrender. He expects us to panic to spend the next 24 hours begging for a settlement. But as the tires crunch against the gravel driveway, steering us away from the Belle Rive estate, I reach into my leather clutch. My fingers brush against a small silver digital audio recorder resting at the bottom of my bag. I look over at Leo, offering him a steady, reassuring nod. We anticipated this exact strike. My father just played his final hand, entirely unaware that we are holding the joker. The morning sun breaks over the garden district, painting the sky in streaks of bruised purple and dull orange. The oppressive heat of the Louisiana summer is already rising, baking the moisture out of the pavement. I sit at the kitchen table, wrapping my hands around a ceramic mug of black chicory coffee. The house is quiet, save for the low hum of the central air conditioning unit. Across the table, Leo opens his laptop. He does not look like a man whose architectural firm is on the brink of ruin. He looks rested. He looks dangerous. My father woke up today believing he secured a fatal victory. Dominic expects the City Planning Commission to arrive at the riverfront development site this morning to finalize the revocation of Leo's licenses. He assumes we spent the entire night panicking, frantically dialing lawyers who will demand exorbitant retainers we can no longer afford. He thinks his political leverage is an impenetrable shield. He underestimated the man I am going to marry. While I spent the last 2 weeks navigating the treacherous waters of my family estate, Leo did not sit idle. He recognized the bureaucratic threat the moment the snap inspection was announced. Instead of fighting the city through standard legal channels, Leo bypassed the system entirely. He hired Marcus Vance. Marcus is a private investigator with a very specific reputation. He spent 15 years as a detective for the New Orleans Police Department before turning in his badge. He walked away because he refused to alter a crime scene report to protect the son of a wealthy state senator. Marcus despises the corrupt, aristocratic machinery that governs this city. When Leo handed him a retainer and a photograph of the lead planning inspector, Marcus did not just take the job, he took it personally. For 7 days, Marcus shadowed the inspector. He tracked the man from municipal offices to lavish lunches paid for by anonymous offshore accounts. And 2 nights ago, Marcus hit the jackpot. Leo taps the trackpad on his laptop. A high-definition audio file loads on the screen. "Listen to this," Leo says, his voice a steady, confident rumble. He hits play. The audio is startlingly crisp. Marcus used a parabolic microphone aimed directly at a corner booth inside a dimly lit Bourbon Street dive bar. The background noise features the clinking of heavy glass and the faint, brassy wail of a jazz trumpet. Then, the lead inspector's voice cuts through the static. His words are slurred, dripping with arrogant intoxication. He had just received the final installment of Dominic's bribe, and he was eager to brag to his drinking companions. "Easiest payout of my career," the inspector slurs on the recording. "The Barbieri patriarch wanted this architect buried. He told me to find a cracked foundation. I told him I did not need a cracked foundation. I just needed a pen. I fabricated the metallurgical stress tests myself. The steel is pristine, but the paperwork says it is garbage." A chorus of coarse laughter erupts from the men sitting with him. "The architect is finished," the inspector continues, his tone thick with cruel satisfaction. "Barbieri essentially handed me a blank check to shut down the riverfront site. The stop work order becomes permanent tomorrow." Leo pauses the recording. The silence in our kitchen is profound, heavy with the weight of the ammunition resting on that hard drive. My father purchased a bureaucratic execution, but he forgot that mercenaries are rarely discreet. We finish our coffee dress in sharp business attire and drive downtown. We do not head to the local police precinct. A standard detective might bury the evidence if the political pressure became too intense. Instead, we drive straight to the district attorney's office. The district attorney is a calculating, pragmatic woman, currently facing a brutal re-election campaign. The citizens of New Orleans are exhausted by endless municipal corruption scandals. Handing her a crystal-clear, indisputable recording of a senior city inspector bragging about accepting bribes to falsify structural safety reports is akin to handing her a golden ticket. We sit in her expansive office watching her listen to the audio file. Her expression remains stoic, but her eyes sharpen with predatory focus. She understands the exact political value of the evidence. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the bureaucratic machinery shifts into rapid, terrifying motion. The district attorney dispatches 2 investigators to the City Planning Commission. The lead inspector is pulled from his desk, stripped of his credentials, and escorted out of the building in handcuffs before he can even access his computer. The Planning Commission, terrified of a public scandal that could cost them their municipal funding, immediately issues an emergency retraction. At 11:15, Leo receives a formal email from the City Council. The fabricated structural negligence report is officially stricken from the public record. The stop work order on the riverfront development is lifted. His architectural licenses are fully cleared. The crisis is averted. The trap is shattered. Across town, inside the towering glass walls of his corporate headquarters, Dominic receives the news. I can only imagine the sheer suffocating shock paralyzing his lungs. He attempts to call his contacts at the Planning Commission, but his calls are diverted to generic voicemails. His political allies, sensing a radioactive corruption scandal brewing at the district attorney's office, sever their ties instantly. No one will risk a federal indictment to protect a shipping magnate whose leverage has just evaporated. My father is exposed. He is politically isolated, stripped of the unyielding authority he wielded for decades. The illusion of his invincibility is broken. But the collapse of his political influence is merely the prelude to the true disaster. While Dominic realizes his extortion plot has failed, a far deadlier sequence of events is unfolding in a sleek, air-conditioned office at Gulfstar Logistics. JACE sits behind his mahogany desk, staring at his dual monitors. His designer suit from the engagement party is ruined, replaced by a tense, wrinkled button-down shirt. Sweat beads on his forehead, rolling down his temples despite the frigid temperature of the room. He repeatedly clicks the refresh button on his encrypted offshore banking portal. The screen blinks, reloading the same terrifying number. The account balance remains insufficient. JACE needed my $40,000 tribute to cover a highly specific, hidden tariff penalty. When the Port Authority automated auditing system flagged a minor discrepancy in his Sector 9 cargo weights last week, JACE bribed a mid-level customs clerk to stall the inquiry. The clerk demanded $40,000 to permanently delete the flagged anomaly from the federal ledger. The deadline to wire those funds is noon today. JACE expected me to hand him a cashier's check at the engagement party. He planned to deposit the funds, wire the bribe to the Cayman Islands, and erase his smuggling trail before the federal oversight software initiated a mandatory review. He checks his watch. The digital numbers read 11:58. He picks up his phone, his fingers trembling as he dials Dominic's private line. The call goes straight to voicemail. Dominic is too busy dealing with the fallout of the City Planning Commission disaster to answer. The clock strikes noon. The deadline expires. The offshore wire transfer fails. The bribed customs clerk, realizing the money is not coming, refuses to manually delete the flagged cargo anomaly. Deep within the secure servers of the United States Customs and Border Protection Agency, an automated protocol triggers. The federal software registers a staggering discrepancy between the reported tonnage of agricultural feed entering the Louisiana ports and the actual physical displacement recorded by the automated crane sensors. The system calculates the missing tariff revenue. The numbers climb into the millions. A digital red flag is generated. The anomaly is no longer a minor localized error. It is upgraded to a priority-level fraud alert. The system automatically compiles the shipping manifests, the shell company registration codes, and the routing numbers associated with Gulfstar Logistics. The compiled dossier is instantly transmitted to the regional field office of the FBI. I sit in my Garden District living room looking out the window at the swaying branches of the oak trees. A quiet, satisfying calm washes over me. By refusing to pay their extortion fee, I did not just save my own finances. I pulled the vital linchpin out of their criminal operation. The invisible tripwire has been crossed. The federal tides are shifting, and my family has nowhere left to run. 3 weeks drift by in a tense, suspended calm. The Mississippi River keeps flowing, churning the muddy brown waters, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface of our lives. Leo and I return to our daily routines, rebuilding the architecture firm and securing new logistics contracts. We wait in the quiet humidity, knowing the invisible tripwire has been crossed. Then, the hammer drops. Tuesday morning brings a fleet of dark sport utility vehicles bearing federal plates to the port of South Louisiana. They swarm the administrative headquarters of Gulf Star Logistics and the Barbieri corporate tower simultaneously. Flashing red and blue lights paint the brick walls of the shipyards, halting all commercial transit in the sector. Federal agents in tactical windbreakers bypass the bewildered receptionists. They carry empty cardboard boxes and heavy plastic zip ties. The operation is swift and surgical. Hard drives are unplugged from their bays before anyone can hit a delete key. Filing cabinets are cracked open with pry bars. The untouchable shipping magnate is escorted out of his own building in broad daylight. Dominic's wrists are hidden beneath a tailored suit jacket, his jaw clenched in silent, unyielding fury as local news helicopters circle overhead, broadcasting the fall of the dynasty to the entire state. My phone rings before noon. The caller ID displays a Washington, D.C. area code. The lead prosecutor for the Maritime Fraud Task Force requests my presence at the local field office. They need a translator. The authorities possess the raw data extracted from the automated customs red flag system, but they require an expert to map the labyrinth of Delta shipping lanes and tariff codes. I drive downtown, stepping into an air-conditioned interrogation room that smells of industrial floor wax and stale coffee. The noise of the city fades behind thick, soundproof walls. A seasoned investigator slides a thick stack of printed cargo manifests across the metal table. For 6 hours, I meticulously chart the path of the ghost cargo. I explain the crane sensor displacement metrics. I lay out the mechanical reality of how a ship supposed to be carrying light agricultural feed miraculously weighs heavy enough to sink the hull to its maximum waterline threshold. I detail the blind spots in Sector 9, providing the agents with the exact logistical roadmap my father used to bypass federal oversight. My testimony transforms raw numbers into a clear, undeniable narrative of systemic financial fraud. The investigator leans back in his chair, unbuttoning his collar. He offers me a cup of water and reveals that the suspects are already fracturing under the pressure. JACE, stripped of his country club arrogance, did not last an hour in the federal holding cell. The prospect of serving 20 years in a maximum security penitentiary shattered his polished facade. He demanded a lawyer and immediately offered a plea deal. Jace spilled everything, painting himself as a naive subordinate manipulated by a ruthless patriarch. He claimed Dominic engineered the entire tariff evasion scheme, forcing the junior executive to use his offshore shell companies as disposable shields. When Dominic learned his future son-in-law turned state witness, the fragile family alliance disintegrated into a spectacular legal bloodbath. My father refused to go down alone. He directed his high-priced defense attorneys to bury Jace, submitting decades of private emails proving the younger man was the primary architect of the offshore routing. The two men, once bound by greed and a mutual disdain for me, are now locked in a vicious cage match. They are frantically trying to tear each other apart to appease the federal prosecutors, offering up every hidden secret to save their own skin. The loyalty they valued so highly is exposed as a fleeting, brittle illusion. There is no honor among thieves in the Delta. The investigator pauses, tapping a blue ink pen against his notepad. He slides a new folder across the table, one bearing a bright red classified sticker. He asks me to identify a specific signature on a particular document. I open the file. It is a certified copy of incorporation documents from a sovereign offshore trust. It is the exact same trust Vanguard and Reed tried to force me to sign away my inheritance for. I stare at the bottom of the page. The signature loops in elegant, unmistakable cursive. It belongs to Giselle. My breath hitches in my throat. I trace the ink with my eyes, a cold realization pooling in my stomach. The investigator explains the timeline, and the final piece of the puzzle drops into place with a sickening thud. The Hawaiian mental health break was never a spontaneous vacation to escape the anxiety of my wedding. It was a meticulously planned business trip. Hawaii served as the geographical midway point to meet a specialized international banking intermediary. Giselle flew to the Pacific not to sip champagne, but to physically sign the incorporation papers outside the immediate jurisdiction of the mainland United States. She was not a naive, pampered bystander shielded from the family business. She was a listed co-conspirator. Giselle knew exactly how the money was being laundered, and she willingly put her name on the dotted line to secure her fraudulent inheritance. The video she posted mocking my budget wedding was a calculated distraction. It was a cruel smokescreen designed to hide her treason while she signed away my birthright on a luxury catamaran. The betrayal runs deeper than simple sibling rivalry. It is a cold, calculated financial assassination executed by the sister I spent my entire life protecting. The consequences arrive with breathtaking speed. The federal government does not negotiate with tax evaders, and they move with ruthless efficiency. The Internal Revenue Service issues immediate asset freezes across the entire Barbieri portfolio, including the offshore accounts. Giselle's pristine, curated life evaporates overnight. Her platinum credit cards are declined at a high-end bridal boutique in the French Quarter, leaving her standing at the register in profound humiliation. She attempts to withdraw cash, only to find her trust funds locked behind federal injunctions. The luxury event planners, realizing the incoming wire transfers are bouncing, cancel her upcoming wedding without hesitation. The imported floral arrangements are thrown into commercial dumpsters. The custom ice sculptures melt on the hot pavement outside the reception hall. The catering company repossesses the vintage champagne. The elite socialites who coddled her just days prior delete her number, terrified of being linked to a federal racketeering investigation. The opulent future she sold her soul to secure turns to ash in her hands. She is left with nothing but a ruined reputation, a frozen bank account, and a looming federal indictment. The empire she thought she inherited is nothing but a crime scene. I walk out of the federal building into the fading light of the Louisiana evening. The air feels lighter, the suffocating pressure of my family lifting from my shoulders. The empire is in ruins, the predators are caged. I drive back to my quiet Garden District home, ready to embrace the peace Leo and I fought so hard to secure. The shadows of the past are finally receding. But the delta always has one last current waiting to pull you under. As I pull into my driveway, the sky darkens, hinting at a sudden summer downpour. I step onto my front porch, inserting my key into the lock. Before I can turn the deadbolt, the sound of tires screeching against the wet pavement echoes down the street. A yellow cab idles at the curb. A fragile, trembling figure steps out into the pouring rain, dragging a soaking wet designer suitcase behind her. The doorbell chimes, a sharp, urgent sound piercing the quiet night, forcing me to confront the ghost standing on my doorstep. The rain falls in heavy, punishing sheets, turning the New Orleans streets into rushing rivers. Lightning flashes, casting sharp, brief illumination across the front porch. Giselle stands shivering on the welcome mat. She drags a waterlogged designer suitcase behind her, the leather ruined by the relentless downpour. Her mascara runs down her cheeks in dark, jagged streaks, staining the collar of her expensive cashmere coat. I stand in the doorway, the warm air of the living room at my back, confronting the ghost of my sister. "Eden, please," Giselle whimpers, her voice trembling over the sound of the storm. "They froze my accounts. My credit cards are declining everywhere. JACE locked me out of the condo before the federal agents seized it. I have nowhere else to go." She reaches a shaking hand toward the doorframe. She expects me to swing the door wide open. She relies on the decades of conditioning that trained me to be her permanent safety net. Whenever she broke a vase, failed a class, or wrecked a car, I was the one dispatched to sweep up the glass and pay the damages. I do not step aside. I keep my hand firmly on the brass doorknob. "You need to let me in," Giselle pleads, her tone shifting into a frantic, breathless pitch. "You know how Dominic is. You know how controlling he can be. He and JACE manipulated me. They put those offshore papers in front of me and told me it was standard tax restructuring. I did not understand what I was signing. I am a victim in this Eden. You have to help me." I look at the sibling I spent my entire life shielding from the sharp edges of the world. For a fleeting second, the old instinct flares, urging me to pull her out of the cold and wrap her in a dry towel. Then my newfound clarity slices through the sentimentality. I look into her eyes. Beneath the tears and the ruined makeup, there is no genuine remorse. Her gaze darts nervously around the porch, calculating her odds, searching for the easiest angle of leverage. She is not standing in the rain because she regrets mocking my wedding on a sun-drenched catamaran. She is not apologizing for participating in a scheme designed to steal my inheritance and destroy my career. She is here because the federal government turned off the money tap. She is a parasite who just lost her host, and she is desperately looking for a new vein to tap. "You did not look manipulated on that yacht," I say, my voice level and quiet, cutting through the noise of the rain. "You looked thrilled. You raised a glass of vintage champagne and celebrated my humiliation. You flew to Hawaii, met with an international banking intermediary, and willingly signed your name to a sovereign trust designed to erase me from this family." Giselle recoils, her mouth opening and closing, as she searches for a new defense. "Eden, we are sisters. Blood is blood. You cannot just abandon me on the street." I study her face, feeling the last remaining threads of our familial bond wither and turn to dust. "Blood is just a biological coincidence, Giselle," I reply. "Loyalty is a choice, and you made yours 2 weeks ago." Her expression hardens. The fragile, weeping victim routine vanishes, replaced by a flash of bitter, entitled resentment. She realizes the tears are useless. Her jaw tightens, and the true nature of her character steps into the light. "You always thought you were better than us," Giselle spits, her voice turning venomous. "Just because you play the hard-working martyr on the docks, you are going to let your own sister freeze just to prove a point?" "I am not trying to prove a point," I answer, tightening my grip on the door. "I am just finally closing the ledger. We are out of business." I push the heavy wooden door shut. The latch clicks. I turn the deadbolt, the metallic sliding sound echoing with profound finality in the quiet foyer. I do not look through the peephole. I do not wait to see if she walks away. I turn my back on the front door and walk into the kitchen, where Leo is waiting with a warm cup of tea. The toxic tether is permanently severed. I am finally free. The emotional victory on my front porch is swiftly followed by a structural earthquake in the Louisiana legal system. By the end of the week, the Department of Justice officially classifies the Barbieri Offshore Holding Company as an instrument of federal racketeering. The sovereign trust Dominic so meticulously engineered to bypass the state inheritance laws is legally voided. The federal courts strip the corporate veil, freezing the illicit smuggling profits while separating the legitimate domestic assets my grandfather originally built. Because the offshore trust is dissolved, the legal status of the Barbieri estate reverts to its default condition. I receive a formal summons to a sterile conference room at the federal courthouse in downtown New Orleans. A court-appointed probate attorney, a sharp woman with no ties to Vanguard and Reed, slides a thick binder across the table. When your father attempted to transfer the entirety of the estate to a fraudulent foreign entity, he inadvertently triggered a spectacular legal failsafe, the attorney explains, tapping a silver pen against the binder. Under Louisiana civil law, the doctrine of forced heirship is unforgiving. Since the offshore trust is nullified, the remaining legitimate domestic assets fall back under state jurisdiction. She opens the binder, revealing pages of liquidated financial assets, uncorrupted commercial real estate, and clean maritime equipment. Dominic cannot disinherit you without just cause, she continues, her eyes meeting mine. And considering he is currently sitting in a federal holding cell, awaiting trial for tariff evasion and extortion, the court has ruled that no such cause exists. You are a forced heir, Eden. You are legally entitled to your mandated portion of the liquidated legitimate estate. My father built a labyrinth of deceit to leave me with nothing. But the sheer weight of his corruption collapsed the maze, snapping the original ironclad laws of the Louisiana Delta back into place. 3 days later, a highly secure wire transfer clears into my business account. It is not stolen money. It is the clean, uncorrupted capital generated by decades of legitimate shipping, the very foundation my grandfather established before Dominic poisoned the well. I do not hesitate. I do not hoard the capital or retreat into a quiet life. I use the funds to pour gasoline on the engine of my independent logistics firm. I purchase a sprawling, abandoned brick warehouse located on a prime stretch of the Mississippi River. I hire construction crews to renovate the space, installing state-of-the-art communication terminals and sweeping glass windows that overlook the rushing water. I named the new headquarters Delta Vanguard Logistics. The fall of the Barbieri Empire creates a massive vacuum in the Gulf Coast shipping industry. Dominic's legitimate clients, terrified of being associated with a federal smuggling scandal, scramble to find new coordinators. My phone rings incessantly. I negotiate new contracts, securing trade routes, and expanding my fleet with ruthless, ethical precision. But a logistics firm is nothing without the people who run the docks. When the federal authorities raided Dominic's shipyards, hundreds of honest, hard-working employees found themselves locked out of their jobs. These are the foremen, the crane operators, and the administrative clerks who had no knowledge of JACE's offshore ghost shipments. They are collateral damage in a war they did not ask to fight. I set up a hiring pavilion in the parking lot of my new warehouse. Word spreads rapidly along the riverfront. On a humid Tuesday morning, a line of familiar faces stretches around the block. I sit at a folding table, personally interviewing the men and women I grew up respecting. I hire the veteran harbor master Harlan, appointing him as my chief director of port operations. I ethically absorb the top-tier talent that Dominic took for granted. I offer fair wages, transparent contracts, and a corporate culture built on fierce, unyielding integrity. Within a month, Delta Vanguard Logistics is operating at maximum capacity. The warehouse hums with energy, the radios crackling with inbound freight reports. I stand on the balcony of my office, watching a colossal cargo vessel bearing my company logo navigate the deep water channel. I built a sanctuary out of the ruins of my father's greed. The sun reflects brightly off the water, promising a lucrative, peaceful season. But the legal machinery of the United States government never sleeps. I turn around as my office door clicks open. Harlan steps into the room holding a stiff brown envelope. His weathered face is grim. He walks across the polished concrete floor and hands the parcel to me. "A process server just dropped this off at the front gate," Harlan says, his voice a low, gravelly hum. I break the seal and slide the paperwork out. It is a formal subpoena bearing the seal of the Federal District Court. The trial dates are set. Dominic and Jace have exhausted their delay tactics. They are going to stand before a federal judge, and the prosecutors have named me as their primary expert witness. The sanctuary I built is secure, but I must cross the battlefield one last time to ensure the architects of this nightmare never see the ocean again. 6 months evaporate into the humid Louisiana atmosphere. The federal courthouse in downtown New Orleans stands as a brutalist monument of concrete and glass, a stark contrast to the elegant plantation homes where my family once held court. Outside the heavy revolving doors, a swarm of news vans and eager reporters choke the sidewalks, their camera lenses tracking every movement. The trial of the Barbieri shipping dynasty has become the media spectacle of the year. I navigate the gauntlet of flashing lights, with Leo at my side, stepping out of the searing heat and into the sterile, hyper-conditioned chill of the federal lobby. We take our seats in the gallery during the opening days of the proceedings. I scan the rows of polished wooden pews. 2 rows ahead of me sits my mother. Vivian is a hollow, fragile shell of the woman who slapped me across the face in a sprawling estate foyer. Her posture slumps her shoulders, curving inward. The vibrant Hawaiian tan has faded into a sickly pale hue. The elite socialites who used to flank her like a royal guard are gone, having severed all ties to avoid the political fallout. She sits alone, clutching a designer handbag that now looks like a relic from a forgotten era. She does not turn around to acknowledge me. The prosecution builds a meticulous case, but the true theater unfolds when the defendants turn their weapons on each other. JACE takes the stand first. The tailored suits he once wore like armor are replaced by a standard, ill-fitting defense wardrobe. He sweats profusely under the harsh fluorescent lighting, his hands trembling as he grips the edge of the witness box. Under oath, the junior executive sings like a trapped bird. He points a shaking finger at the defense table, painting my father as a tyrannical mastermind who forced his subordinates into illegal tariff evasion under the threat of career ruin. JACE portrays himself as a naive victim, a pawn moved across a chessboard by a ruthless patriarch. Dominic's defense attorney retaliates with lethal precision. During cross-examination, the seasoned lawyer produces hundreds of internal Gulfstar Logistics emails. He dismantles the victim narrative, painting JACE as a greedy rogue operator who manipulated the offshore accounts to fund a lavish lifestyle. The 2 men sit feet apart, exchanging glances laced with pure, unadulterated hatred. The courtroom watches a dynasty consume itself. They tear each other apart, doing the prosecutor's job for them. On the 4th day, the bailiff calls my name. I walk through the wooden swinging gate, raise my right hand, and swear to tell the truth. I take my seat in the witness box. The leather chair creaks in the quiet room. The lead federal prosecutor approaches the podium. He powers on the digital projector, illuminating a screen facing the jury box. The display shows the raw dock logs extracted from the harbor master's flash drive. Row upon row of dense alphanumeric shipping codes fill the projection. To the untrained eye, it is an indecipherable wall of static. The prosecutor asks me to explain the anomaly hidden within the data. I look past the 12 jurors. I look directly at the defense table, locking eyes with the man who raised me. Dominic sits rigid, his jaw clenched, waiting for my nerve to break. He expects the emotional weight of testifying against my own blood to paralyze my tongue. It does not break. I turn my attention back to the screen. A vivid memory surfaces, pulling me into the past. I am 13 years old, standing in the dim light of my father's shipyard office. The scent of rich cigar smoke and oiled machinery fills the air. A younger Dominic points a thick finger at a spread of paper manifests. "Men lie Eden," he had told me, his voice a low, resonant rumble. "Paperwork lies, but the physical weight of the steel never lies. Follow the weight, and you will always catch the thief." I pick up the laser pointer resting on the ledge of the witness box. I aim the red dot at the inbound cargo column. The documents submitted to United States Customs declare these vessels were carrying low-grade agricultural feed, I say, my voice steady and echoing clearly through the courtroom. The declared weight dictates a minimal import tax, allowing the shipping firm to bypass the standard levies applied to industrial freight. I move the red dot to the adjacent column, highlighting the crane sensor logs. However, the automated displacement metrics recorded at the port of South Louisiana tell a different story. I continue. The physical strain registered by the unloading cranes reveals the containers weighed triple the declared amount. You cannot fake gravitational displacement. The ships were heavily laden with high-value industrial machinery routed through Cayman Island shell corporations to evade federal tariffs. They falsified the paperwork, but they could not falsify the steel. The jury follows the red dot, tracking the irrefutable mathematical proof. I walk them through the offshore routing, the falsified bills of lading, and the missing financial gaps. I use the exact auditing techniques Dominic taught me to dismantle his defense, piece by piece. The irony hangs heavy in the chilled air of the courthouse. He forged a weapon to protect his empire, and that weapon is currently testifying against him. My testimony is cold, analytical, and devoid of any emotional hesitation. I do not play the wounded daughter seeking vengeance. I play the seasoned logistics coordinator, executing her job with flawless precision. When the prosecutor concludes his questioning, the defense attempts to rattle me. Dominic's lawyer tries to paint me as a vindictive, estranged child seeking revenge for a ruined wedding. I do not raise my voice. I simply point back to the mathematical data on the screen, reiterating that the numbers possess no emotional bias. The defense attorney eventually retreats to his seat, realizing every attempt to undermine my credibility only reinforces my authority. The trial concludes faster than anyone anticipated. The jury deliberates for less than 8 hours before handing the bailiff their sealed verdict. I sit in the gallery with Leo as the judge reads the decision. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing phase is swift and unforgiving. The federal judge shows zero leniency for white-collar criminals who attempt to subvert the national economy. JACE receives a decade in a federal penitentiary for spearheading the tariff fraud and attempting to bribe customs officials. Dominic, cited as the orchestrator of the expansive racketeering and extortion network, is handed an even heavier sentence. He will spend the remainder of his twilight years locked inside a maximum security facility, stripped of the power he valued above his own family. The bailiffs approach the defense table. They instruct the men to stand. The metallic click of handcuffs snapping around Dominic's wrists echoes sharply over the murmur of the reporters. I watch the marshals lead him toward the side exit. He stops for a fraction of a second, casting one final glance over his shoulder. His eyes search the gallery, finding me sitting in the second row. There is no defiance left in his gaze, only the hollow recognition of his own defeat. I do not look away. I do not offer a smirk or a nod. I simply watch him disappear through the heavy wooden doors. The Barbieri legacy, an institution that ruled the Mississippi Delta for 3 generations, is officially eradicated. The empire is dead, buried under the weight of its own hubris. Leo wraps his arm around my shoulder, leaning close. "It is over," he whispers. I stand up, smoothing the front of my blazer. I look around the emptying courtroom, feeling an unexpected sensation bloom in my chest. For decades, I carried the fear of their disapproval like a stone in my throat. I braced for the day they would turn their immense wealth against me. Now, the storm has passed, and I am still standing. I feel no sorrow for the men in chains. I feel no grief for the mother shrinking away into the shadows. I feel only a bright, empowering clarity. We walk out of the courthouse, stepping back into the searing Louisiana sunlight. The air tastes clean. My independent logistics firm is thriving, built on a foundation of unyielding integrity. The toxic chapter of my life is closed. But as we walk toward our car, my phone buzzes with an incoming email from the Louisiana Port Authority. The board of directors has convened an emergency session in the wake of the federal convictions, and they have requested my immediate presence. The final current of the Delta is shifting, preparing to deliver a reward I never saw coming. A year slips by. The Louisiana heat remains an eternal fixture, but the air feels remarkably different now. The suffocating tension that once defined my existence is gone, replaced by the steady, rhythmic hum of progress. I stand on the steel balcony of my corner office, looking down at the sprawling operations floor of Delta Vanguard Logistics. The warehouse is a symphony of coordinated motion. Forklifts glide between towering aisles of documented, fully taxed cargo. Dispatchers speak into headsets, their voices echoing off the polished concrete walls, routing shipments through the intricate web of the Gulf Coast. Harlan, my chief director of port operations, walked a clipboard. He pauses to share a joke with a crane operator, the rich sound of their laughter rising above the mechanical noise. I smile, gripping the cool metal of the balcony railing. We built this sanctuary from the wreckage of a corrupted dynasty. We established a corporate culture rooted in transparency, paying fair wages, and enforcing rigorous ethical auditing protocols. The industry noticed. The clients who fled my father's ruined enterprise did not just return. They brought alliances with them. Our fleet has tripled in size, navigating the murky bayous with an untarnished reputation. I walk back into my office and sit behind my desk. Resting in the center of the oak surface is a framed document. It is the finalized contract from the Louisiana Port Authority, the result of the emergency session I attended the day Dominic was convicted. I remember walking into that austere boardroom 12 months ago, expecting an inquisition or a tedious bureaucratic review. Instead, the chairman of the Port Commission stood up and offered me his hand. The regional maritime economy was reeling from the federal indictments. The overarching government shipping contract, a lucrative multi-decade agreement that formed the bedrock of Dominic's wealth, had been instantly revoked by the Department of Justice. The port needed a replacement. They needed a logistics coordinator who possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of the Delta, flawless operational infrastructure, and an unassailable ethical record. They did not ask me to submit a bid. They handed me the keys to the kingdom. "You proved you cannot be bought," Eden, the chairman, had said, his voice echoing in the vast room. "You proved you value the integrity of these waters over your own blood. The federal authorities trust you. The unions trust you. We want Delta Vanguard to assume the primary government contract, effective immediately." I look at the framed signatures on my desk. I did not just survive their attempt to erase me. I did not merely escape the blast radius of their greed. I ethically absorbed their entire territory. The empire my parents tried to steal and hand to a fraudulent junior executive now belongs entirely to me. I conquered the current. The digital clock on my computer monitor shifts to 4 in the afternoon. I shut down the terminal, grab my leather tote bag, and walk out of the warehouse. Today is not a day for auditing manifests or reviewing quarterly projections. Today is a celebration of survival, loyalty, and undeniable victory. I drive toward the riverfront, the late afternoon sun casting long golden shadows across the levee. Moored at the edge of the historic docks is a classic Mississippi paddle wheel riverboat, its white wooden trim gleaming against the muddy brown water. Festoon lights are strung along the upper deck, glowing softly as the evening approaches. I step out of the car, smoothing the fabric of my dress. It is not a $10,000 silk gown dripping in heavy lace. It is a simple, elegant ivory slip dress that moves effortlessly in the warm southern breeze. I walk up the wooden gangway, the sounds of a vibrant jazz trio floating down from the upper deck. A lively, bright trumpet cuts through the humid air, carrying a melody of pure joy. Leo waits for me at the top of the stairs. He wears a tailored linen suit, his hair swept back by the wind. When he sees me, his eyes soften, filled with a profound, quiet adoration. He reaches out, pulling me into a warm embrace. We stand there for a moment, listening to the water lap against the hull of the boat. "Are you ready?" Leo whispers, pressing a kiss to my temple. I nod, my heart swelling with a deep, unbreakable peace. I am ready. We walk onto the main deck together. There is no empty aisle. There is no suffocating silence or whispering crowd of judgmental socialites. The guest list for our vow renewal is small, curated, with uncompromising intention. There are no estranged aunts or manipulative matriarchs. The people standing on this deck are our chosen family. Harlan stands near the railing, holding a glass of iced tea, wearing a sharp suit I have never seen him in before. The uncorrupted dock workers, the honest regional brokers, and the loyal friends who stood by us during the smear campaign raise their glasses as we approach. The private investigator, Marcus, leans against a wooden pillar, offering a rare, genuine smile. These are the people who navigate the truth, the ones who refuse to be bought by fear or influence. We gather near the stern of the boat as the paddle wheel begins to turn, churning the river water into white foam. The vessel detaches from the dock, gliding smoothly into the center of the Mississippi. The setting sun paints the sky in breathtaking strokes of amber violet and burning crimson, reflecting off the surface of the mighty river. An ordained friend steps forward to lead the brief ceremony. We do not need long, elaborate speeches to prove our commitment. We already survived the fire. We faced the bureaucratic execution of Leo's firm and the calculated destruction of my inheritance, and we emerged stronger, bound by a loyalty that no amount of extortion could sever. We exchange our rings again, repeating the promises we made in that cold, judgmental cathedral a year ago. But this time the words are not spoken as an act of defiance. They are spoken as a declaration of victory. The applause from our friends is loud, genuine, and warm, wrapping around us like a protective shield. As the evening deepens, the jazz band transitions into a lively, upbeat rhythm. Waiters circulate with trays of fresh seafood and sparkling cider. Laughter rings out across the water, echoing into the darkening sky. I watch Leo talking animatedly with Marcus, a bright, unburdened smile on his face. The riverfront development site is fully completed, his architectural firm expanding beyond city limits. We both built new kingdoms from the ashes of their sabotage. I step away from the crowd for a moment, walking toward the wooden railing at the edge of the deck. The night air is thick with the scent of sweet olive and river silt. I lean against the polished wood, looking out over the dark expanse of the delta. Somewhere in a federal penitentiary, JACE is sitting in a sterile cell, his designer suits replaced by standard-issue uniforms. Somewhere in a maximum security facility, Dominic is staring at a concrete wall, stripped of the political leverage he used to terrorize this state. In a small rented apartment, Vivian is likely sitting alone, shunned by the society she worshipped, clinging to the fading memories of her stolen status. Giselle is navigating the harsh reality of a frozen bank account, forced to discover who she is without the shield of stolen wealth. They believed family was a weapon. They thought blood was a chain they could yank whenever they required a tribute. They miscalculated the strength of the daughter they pushed into the shadows. I watched the murky currents of the Mississippi River swirl and eddy beneath the hull of the boat. The delta is a treacherous environment, filled with hidden shoals, unpredictable tides, and dangerous undertows. It swallows the careless and drowns the arrogant. For 28 years, my parents tried to teach me to fear the water. They wanted me to believe they controlled the depths, warning me that independence would cause me to sink. They were wrong. They did not realize that by forcing me to audit their lies, they taught me how to read the currents. By pushing me into the storm, they taught me how to navigate the waves. I breathe in the cool night air, lifting my face to the starlit sky. The jazz music swells behind me, a triumphant, soaring note of pure freedom. I am no longer fighting the tide. I am charting the course. The river belongs to me now. We are raised on a very specific, deeply ingrained mythology of the American family. It is a portrait painted with the broad strokes of Sunday dinners, white picket fences, and the implicit promise that the people who share your blood will be the ones to catch you when you fall. The American dream is not just about financial prosperity, it is fundamentally tied to the idea of the nuclear family as a sanctuary, a safe haven from the cutthroat realities of the outside world. But as we strip away the veneer of this idealized tradition, we are often forced to confront a terrifying reality. Sometimes, the very hands meant to build our foundation are the ones quietly dismantling our floorboards. The narratives we have explored, stories of scapegoats and golden children, of stolen inheritances, corporate sabotage, and weaponized love, are not merely dramatic anomalies. They are profound reflections on the dark underbelly of family responsibility, serving as a desperate plea for a revolution in how we value, guide, and protect our children. At the core of these tragedies is a catastrophic failure of emotional awareness. In a healthy traditional family structure, a parent's primary responsibility is to serve as a guide, cultivating fairness, honesty, and emotional resilience. True parenting is a selfless architecture. It is the act of building a child up so they can one day stand entirely on their own, secure in their inherent worth. Yet, in families where narcissism takes root, children are not viewed as individuals with their own sovereign futures. They are categorized into transactional roles: the golden child, to project the family's vanity, and the scapegoat, to absorb its failures and finance its survival. When parents choose favoritism over fairness, they do not just hurt one child, they corrupt the entire bloodline. The golden child is crippled by entitlement, never learning the vital lessons of accountability, empathy, or honest labor. Meanwhile, the scapegoat is burdened with a lifetime of unearned guilt, conditioned to believe that their only value lies in what they can provide for others. We see this devastating dynamic when a daughter's wedding is abandoned for a Hawaiian vacation, or when a son's pristine credit is harvested to subsidize a brother's luxury cars. These are profound betrayals of the parental mandate. A parent is supposed to be a child's safest harbor, not a predator waiting in the shallows to consume their resources. Honesty is the only mortar strong enough to hold a family together through the inevitable storms of life. In American culture, we often emphasize success legacy and the outward projection of prosperity. We worship at the altar of appearances. But wealth built on a foundation of lies, on forged signatures, hidden offshore accounts, and whispered smear campaigns, is inherently fragile. When parents lie to their children, or worse, lie about their children to preserve a pristine public image, they shatter the fundamental trust required for long-term guidance. How can a child learn integrity from a father who extorts them? How can a daughter learn self-worth from a mother who systematically erases her from the family portrait to maintain an illusion of perfection? The lesson here is not just about avoiding criminal behavior. It is about the quiet, daily choices that define moral leadership in a home. Emotional awareness means recognizing your child's pain and validating it rather than gaslighting them into silence to protect your own fragile ego. It means holding every child to the same standard of accountability, regardless of how it reflects on the family name. It means understanding that respect is not an automatic right granted by biology. It is a currency earned through consistent, loving, and fair behavior over a lifetime. Navigating these turbulent waters is incredibly isolating. When you are the one standing in the rain, holding the heavy realization that your family is fundamentally broken, it can feel like you are the only person in the world carrying that specific, suffocating weight. You question your own sanity, wondering if you are truly the villain they have painted you to be. But you are not alone. There is a profound healing power in sharing these narratives, in realizing that the pattern of toxicity is a universal language, and so is the blueprint for survival. If these reflections resonate with the quiet battles you are fighting behind your own closed doors, I encourage you to subscribe and follow Amanda Told Stories. Here, we shed light on the shadows. We build a community where the truth is never cropped out of the picture, and where every story serves as a stepping stone toward reclaiming your own narrative. As we step back and look at the wreckage of these empires, the foreclosed mansions, the federal indictments, the empty pews at the cathedral, we are left with a lingering, uncomfortable question about the nature of forgiveness, legacy, and loyalty. Society tells us that family is everything. We are conditioned from birth to believe that blood requires infinite patience, that no matter how deep the wound, the ultimate goal must always be reconciliation. We are taught that walking away is a failure of grace, a selfish abandonment of our moral duty. But I want to offer a different truth. Sometimes the most profound act of family responsibility you can commit is to be the one who burns the toxic family tree to the ground. We are constantly told that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But we rarely discuss the lethal toxicity of forced forgiveness. Forgiveness without accountability is not grace, it is complicity. It is an open invitation for the abuser to reload their weapon and aim it at you once again. True moral courage does not always look like a tearful reunion at the Thanksgiving table passing the turkey as if the bruises never existed. Sometimes true courage looks like a deadbolt sliding into place. It looks like a signed eviction notice to the ghosts of your past. It looks like turning your back on the people who gave you life in order to finally save your own. Your legacy is not defined by the people who brought you into this world. It is defined by what you refuse to carry forward. When you stand in the ashes of the expectations that were designed to break you, you might just realize that you were never the tragedy of the story. You were the fire they were too arrogant to see coming. And as you look into the mirror standing in the quiet aftermath of the storm, you have to ask yourself a question that haunts every survivor. Are you still waiting for an apology that will never arrive? Or are you finally ready to forgive yourself for walking away,